Thank you very much. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Rocky Mountain House. We're having a Committee of the Whole meeting for June 13th of 2023, and so I will now call the meeting to order. Number 2.1, adoption of the agenda. Is there any items to add or delete from the agenda as we see before us? Seeing none, I'll call that. Ask for a motion, please. Councillor Caprero.
I'll make the motion to adopt the agenda for June 13th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting.
Thank you very much. Seeing that there's no other questions or comments on that motion, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you very much. This evening, I'm pleased to see that we have a delegation before us with Kevin Stalker and Alfred Von Hollen. And I just, before you get going, I wanted to say again that I really appreciate, the town really appreciates you doing this work, and also to let everyone know that they are not taking remuneration for the work they've done on this task force. They're doing it voluntarily as a gift to our community. So thank you again, and I'll just remind you before you get going to press the buttons to turn your microphones on. Thank you very much.
I did want to, Your Honor, thank you for that. Mimi wasn't available. I thought she might be because of the evening, but she wasn't available. She wanted to attend as well, but certainly other commitments took her away.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate that, her efforts as well. So, did you want to give us an update or start with some information? I think that's what we normally will do when they have a delegation, and then we can go over things or ask questions as we go. Tonight it allows us a lot more time to discuss things.
Okay. I just had one question. I think it probably would serve the purpose if the other day we had kind of a mishmash if we just started from the front and okay, that's
Absolutely.
As opposed to try and add on to what we talked about the other day. Okay,
if you wanted to start and so that it makes sense to how you want to present, that I'm fine to repeat information, just so that it makes it easier for you. That's great. Like I said, we have a little bit extra time tonight because we're with the Committee of the Whole rather than during regular council meeting. And Kevin, do you want to just turn your speaker on all the time there?
Okay, I didn't know.
Yeah, and then, because then
Feedback.
you don't have to worry about turning it on and off until we're done.
Okay.
Thank you. So please, proceed.
Okay, first of all, I would like to comment on how I see how dedicated this council is to their jobs, for the most part. It's incredible. When I look at the number of hours that Councillor Hutchinson and Councillor Phillips put in on their time with this town, it's absolutely incredible. And so, yes, you two are very, very dedicated. All of you are, but I see when we look at the number of hours that you have put in, it's quite awesome. And so you're to be commended for that time that you dedicate to this town. I'm going to back up now to when I was on council. We were appointed. Larry Hoekstead was our CAO at the time, and when we came on council, to make everything fair, we were simply told that first meeting in October, Alfred, you're on these committees, Bernie Mirius, you're on this committee, Joan Anderson, you're on this committee, and that we didn't have a chance to argue that. It was just told us that you're on that committee. And we felt, and I feel, that if this council were to do something like that, to try to even out your workload. I see some of you, when I look at your hours that you're spending here, are really very busy, and some, maybe because of your jobs and the situation with your families and so on, you're not so busy, but in order to even out this workload, maybe something like that should be implemented. Just a thought.
Thank you. Some other communities, actually the mayor does review that with the CAO and makes recommendations so that it is a little bit more evenly spread out. We just chose to do it a different way this time. As you'll see, I'm not on even ICC because council voted who would be on it.
The way I understand it in discussion is that you have your meeting in October, and then it's asked who would like to be on this board, who would like to be on that board, and you can say, yes, I would like to be. And then if two of you want to be on the same board, you work it out, you do rock, paper, scissors or something to decide who should be, if it's suitable for one person, or if that committee needs two people because of its importance. Just a thought.
In the report itself, we did address that after we took it back, because the numbers weren't correct. We did end up addressing that aspect of honorarium and the commitment that is unaccounted for, because there isn't any accounting associated that with, on the per diem side, there's accounting. It's very clear if you attend a meeting and how much a person is going to receive for that. So there seemed to be a disparity, and it was both in the questionnaires as well as your had sent that email and commented about, and we mentioned that there's probably something that needs to happen amongst the group around to level the playing field, so that people that are having similar amount of time, and we commented in there that one of the questionnaires, somebody had commented that respondents suggested that the council should at least 10 hours a week to receive honorarium. At 10 hours a week, an honorarium for a counselor at $1,200 would be $30 an hour over four, yes, that calculation's correct, I'm just doing it in my head, a $30 an hour commitment on their time.
At 10 hours a week, it's $27.69 per hour.
1,200?
$27.69 per hour at a 10-hour work week for
I'm
counselors.
having trouble with the calculation because the honorarium is $1,200.
Yep.
You would have 40 into 1,200 is 30.
Even.
I'm just
Can't
doing it in my
have any
head.
change.
If you're using a
I
calculator.
stand corrected.
Okay, if you're using a calculator, I was just doing it in my head.
Yeah.
But, okay, but regardless, I mean, it isn't certainly a CAO wage or a corporate head wage, but certainly the compensation is somewhere in the ballpark. Interestingly enough, when we looked at all the numbers, and maybe, I don't know if you want us to get into the numbers that were provided, and I just got a comment for Betty again. She did a fabulous job. I actually spent a little time with her yesterday, I guess it was, and we talked about these numbers. And where the numbers came from is the Municipal Measurement Index, and it looks at comparators with population, geography, location, and similar operations, so the amount of money. So I think that there was, I can't remember what Betty and I talked about, maybe like 40 communities that would have fallen within the range that the government says you should kind of use 10% either side. So Rocky Mountain House falling in at 76, you could go, that's 7.6 on to 76 is like 82 or whatever that is, 83, 4. Yeah, 83 or 84 would be the top end, and 76 less 8 is 68 would be the bottom end, kind of in those marks. When you use that, it was a really broad number of communities. One, and Betty had mentioned to me that one of them was like Fort McLeod, and we go, okay, do we have anything that's even, like, I get that the
Yeah.
ranking is
The
the
metrics.
same, and you know, that their budgets will be around the same, and they have a bunch of stuff the same, but I don't think, so Betty had narrowed down that scope, and I think she did a great job kind of picking towns like, you know, Slave Lakes is 76, Red Cliffs is 76, Wainwright, they're all the exact identical to us. So there was 5 that were identical at 76. There was only 2 under, and there was 11 communities that were over the 76. And what that says to, when you're looking at the rankings, that the ones that are over the 76 are more complex communities. And Your Honor, you had asked a question what Sylvan Lake had ranked at.
Yeah,
Well, Sylvan Lake wasn't even involved in the comparison, because first off, it's a city.
yeah,
And runs over, well, I don't know if they call themselves a city,
No.
frankly, I don't think they do, but their numbers are higher. But it was actually an 84, which would have been the very top, and if you look at the comparators, Drumheller's an 84, and I believe that's the only 84 on the whole list of those. So that would be almost an outlier, it would be right at the very top. If you look at the numbers that were provided, with only 2 under the 76, it gives a lot of favoritism, that's not the right word, but it gives a lot of credit to a lot of, because there's 11 over, these are more complex communities than what we're faced with on this ranking. So the theory would be that that mayor and council will get paid more. So it actually positions this council at 76. It gives a benefit on the average of bringing up the average. If there's 18 communities, if there was 9 over and 8 under, or 9 under, or 8 under, and Rocky was right in the middle, it would actually drag down the average, and mayor and council would be making even a higher rate compared to the average, if that makes sense. I don't know if that helps explain what we're looking at here.
I think that-
I'm not as familiar with how the ranking process works, because they don't just look at wages, do they not look at everything in the community to get that ranking?
Population, geography, location, and similar operations, so they would look at the budget here, whatever, 26 million is it? I'm guessing in my head.
40.
Pardon? 24, sorry. I get my work budget confused. But, they'll look at that budget similar, the expenditures on facilities or expenditures. I don't know how in-depth it goes, but it does look at the operational cost. And that's done by an independent government something or other. Municipal affairs there, thank you, Betty, that are giving us these numbers. And we felt that the numbers when we looked at them, Mimi and Alfred and I, and we went, okay, this, when you start looking at the communities and you look at the ones that are 76, you go, okay, the populations are in some cases lower, quite a bit are around the same, population, like Devon, for example, which is, we all know a bedroom community. I don't know what their complexities are, but it was a 76. So I think what we were given to work with is a really accurate comparator, and in comparison, I think is a fair way to word it.
And I think what we have to do is paraphrase this to say that according to this document that Betty gave us, Rocky Mountain House is ranked at 5 out of the 17, 18 communities as far as your compensations compared to the other communities. So that's what I think this boils down to. This document is what you all have. And so when you look at where your average is, where the mayor's average and where councilor's average is, it makes us look fairly decent. You're not the poor man on the block. You're not the most underpaid in the province of Alberta for the size of the town. You're doing quite well. You're above average, and there's nothing wrong with being above average. Somebody has to be. Somebody has to be above average, somebody has to be below average in order to make an average. And I think you're fortunate, we're fortunate, that we've got, this town is as good as it is, and we've got the councilors we have, and you're able to be compensated at the rate that you're being compensated.
So just to kind of finish your question, you had asked, Your Honor, about Sylvan Lake. So Sylvan Lake was an 84, which would have been right at the very top and wasn't used as a comparator because, I expect.
It's raining.
Yeah, I
That's
expect
the
they get.
noises.
Yeah, no, it's not hail, so we're in
No.
good shape. I'm estimating they may get 100,000 visitors a year in Sylvan Lake, with the lake and stuff there. Their complexity is certain higher. Their mayor is compensated at 87,343. And councilors, surprisingly, are very close to our councilors at 33. Our councilors are getting 30,601, and Sylvan Lake is 33,676 on that comparator scale done by the Municipal Measurement Index is what it's called. So
Okay, good, because we often get compared to our closest neighbors, and so it's nice to know what our closest neighbor is doing, right? When you're looking
Yeah.
at all those type things. Boy, it's really raining. Sorry.
And I guess when you, that comparative, the closest neighbors is a little more difficult because the neighbors that are on the corridor, of course, have all sorts of complexity, the Highway 2 corridor. And this has taken that kind of out of the equation where you have Wainwright is a 76. Their population's actually a little bit lower than ours, but there are ones here that are 76 and their population is almost identical to ours. And I think that is a fairer comparison looking at the overall, you know, like to compare to Drumheller where they probably have 100,000 visitors again because of the Tyrell Museum, that becomes a difficult, what they need to provide as a council, as a town and stuff compared to what we're providing.
Well-
But Drumheller is in this, and Drumheller was an 84, which is again the top of the scale.
Yeah, so, just a piece of information about Drumheller, when we went down there, they actually are nearly both a town and a county, because they take up sort of like all of the community on the whole, would it be called River Valley? Tracy, would it be called, do they call it the River Valley? That whole region there? Because their town actually limits. Yeah, goes from like one of the mines that closed all the way, so they're totally unique anyways, so I can see that they would place
Yeah, and they're
way
just-
differently than us, because they're really almost like a county and a town combined because of their geography.
So,
We had a meeting with the town council one day, sorry.
yeah, their populations, I'm just trying to do the calculus, 1,600 more than us. They're at 7,945 and we're at 6,302, so around 1,300, I guess. No, that is 1,600,
Yeah.
more than us. Pardon?
That's what this chart says, though.
Okay, but it is, I believe the population was even provided by municipal as part of their index. But regardless, it's around those numbers. I think it compares us favorably with other communities to give us a sense of where remuneration looks for mayor and council. I don't know if you want us to go into the logic, which was a very, I think I said, it was a very touchy question in relation to, should compensation be based on performance? I don't know if you want us to go into our logic associated with that.
I just don't think that it's really applicable.
It was for us.
I know, yeah, it was for you.
Yeah.
However, like, I'll just put it this is my personal feeling, but we just direct the ship in the direction that we want to go. And the other thing is previous council could make decisions that our council say has to make it work. And so some of the decisions we make today affect things that happened 20 years ago. Some of the decisions that were made 20 years ago affect what we're addressing today. So when you look at the overall performance of the town, there's a lot of outlying factors. So if we're all here at the table and we're doing the best job that we can for making decisions and taking our fiduciary, some of those factors really can't be held on us if there's things that happened 20 years ago that we're dealing with, or things that we decide today could affect people 20 years from now, and the people who get elected shouldn't be punished or receive accolades because the people previously or the next, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
I agree that's very fair to frame it that way, but what we weren't aware of is where that accountability, like we felt that if the performance of council is strong and it meets the indicators that were provided at that website, I don't have the address, the outcomes, minister intervention, and all of these things. So a number of those reflect directly on the council of the day.
right.
And if those indicators aren't in place, and they may very well be in
Okay.
place, I'm not aware that they're in place. If they're not in place, we will always have that, well, that was happened 20 years ago and we're trying to rebuild that. If those indicators were in place 20 years ago that said, for the investment in infrastructure, you're looking at it and going, okay, we haven't had any investment in infrastructure, let's say, in the last 4 councils. Now, we're getting rated on that. I think that there's a true ability to use, and again, this is a government website that actually gives you
Okay.
the touchstones, so that moving forward, and I agree that it's probably not fair to rate you, you go, okay, well, we didn't even have anything to do with those decisions
Right.
3 councils ago or 4 councils ago, and now we're losing,
We don't look as profitable.
yeah,
No.
yeah, that is something, it's now we're being blamed for that.
Right.
But that correction that can happen, recognizing that there's touchstones in place, that these are the things we're trying to meet
Yep.
every year, and these are we're going to, I think, will benefit moving forward.
If, certainly if you
Yeah,
wanted to
but-
present the information,
You folks have read it, I think, and
Yeah.
I assume the public this would be posted on the
This is,
website here, so they could get a copy of it. Like,
I'm looking over it's a public document now that it's been, is that correct? Or we would
Okay.
accept it, right? But it is a public document, yes.
okay, so then we don't have
I got
to
a yes
waste
from-
everyone's time to go into. Okay, yeah, so if people would like to see what those touchstones were, you know, the accumulated surplus to deficit ratios and all the things, then those are available to them. I think one of the points that came up the other day, and it was interesting, because Councillor Hutchison had asked about, okay, you've made these calculations, and it's of cost per hour. And that section we actually rewrote, and I'm just trying to find it here. Actually, we didn't rewrite the whole section, because it led me to, Alfred and I, and led us to think about, okay, we've said the mayor's making 143.76 per hour, and that does not take into that takes in the honorarium, but it does not take in how much time you're spending with your honorarium. Which then led us back to the questionnaire, and there was a number of people, when we asked question 6 about the honorarium and how much time it takes, that said, yeah, this thing's varies. You know, some people are doing, also people had equated the honorarium was preparation for meetings. So then what we said in here, that the preparation time for a meeting was 50%, and you'd ask the question, where did I get that? And I said, well, I got it off the internet, and you kind of looked at me like, yeah, well, everything's on the internet, and rightfully so. I mean, you can find any answer you want on the internet. So I went into a bit of an in-depth kind of look at is it a fair assessment to say for every hour of meeting, there takes an hour of preparation. And there was 2 or 3 of the companies that are business companies on there, that's what they were saying, that the other side of that coin is, and Councillor Alt had shown the size of his package. You know, sorry, that was not appropriate, was it?
Yeah.
Sorry. We will go on from that. It's the council package that was part of the thing, and I have no doubt that, you know, those are taking a long time to get through. But then when you're going to other meetings where there's FCM, where there isn't any prep, I think those kind of things start to equal out, that an hour of a meeting takes an hour of preparation. And I think that in relative terms is, then starts to look at the cost per hour that we looked at. So we left the data in relation to, I'm just trying to find it, that council's making 97.48 per hour prior to preparation time. And that 97.48 is all their remuneration. And what led us to leave that in was in relation to when we looked at the questions, and then something you had provided to us as well, and we kind of looked at it and we went, the honorarium side of things is so, there's no accountability. I'll just get to there's no accountability about, you know, some people, like Glenn had said, he's doing, 15 hours all this month, and some others may or may not be even coming close to that. So I think somewhere in the document we said that I think the council needs to own that, and whether it's a charter to make sure that you're all being treated fairly, that, and whether there's a charter where you all agree that, okay, it's 10 hours, and actually we did quote that in there. One of the respondents had said that they felt there needed to be that because there was delivery. So once we removed the honorarium do you want to take that part, Alfred?
Yeah,
Okay.
then it breaks down into, so the mayor,
Don't-
your
do we have a
worship is,
question? I think we have a
oh,
question.
sorry.
Wait, I'll just have Counselor Ald has a question.
I
Yeah.
just want to go back to that comment you made. You referenced it earlier, and then you referenced it again regarding the email from the mayor and why that took you down the other road as far as saying there was a lot of inequity between the council and their input in what they did. And I take some pretty big exception to that because that's a false statement, and you got that from an email. There isn't one member on this table that doesn't pull their weight and attend their meetings and do what they should be doing. So that quote where some members of council attend lots and some attend none was totally misleading. And then you guys took that and you went, that's the only addition you made to that report was based on the honorarium and then having everything equal. So I just wanted to make sure that it's 100% known that nobody doesn't do anything around this table.
So this form that we have where your pay stubs are on is inaccurate.
Not the pay stubs. What we're talking about is the honorarium portion, which you guys were just referencing and having some kind of a formula for figure on who's doing what and
No, we
compensating.
didn't have any formula. We had the questionnaires said, I think the quote was that, task force acknowledged and notes the responsibility questionnaire. There are different levels of engagement of counselors in relation to honorarium compensation. In response to the survey case question related to honorarium, one respondent suggested that the counselors should spend at least 10 hours a week to receive honorarium if only attending council meetings and addressing emails. So
Right.
I don't know what else we could arrive from that
The
they're
only
saying.
difference in that report that you guys made is when you were talking about seeing the mayor and council adopt an approach where individuals on council reporting their activities monthly, workload is distributed. That all is being derived from comment from the mayor.
No, that's not fair at all.
That's the only change that come in this report from the first one we got.
No,
So everything is
it
based
said
on-
nothing to do with the comment, although I'd have to look, I forgot to print that off. But it was noted in the questionnaire that there wasn't a balance between the honorarium. And then once we went back and we were looking at the hourly rate, and we went, okay, we piled it all in together. We put the honorarium and the per diem in together, so now we'll divide it. And we'll look at honorarium separately. Because we had it all in together where the
It skewed the
councilors are
numbers
making 98, and so then we went, okay, if we're going to get an accurate account of how much is being paid for per diem and what's going on over there per hour, then we don't have any hours for honorarium, have absolutely no hours. And that was our suggestion to council is that, where is it here? Task force supports the honorarium approach to compensation, but would like to see mayor and council adopt approach where individuals on council report on their activity monthly and the workload is distributed equally. This fair distribution workload and accountability to each other and the public at large. And what we also, when we started, once we had to divide it, then we went, okay, how do we see what's happening with honorarium? There was a couple of different responses to the questionnaires that suggested that the honorarium wasn't balanced.
Right.
Sorry, yes, the honorarium wasn't balanced. Wasn't in response to what the mayor had asked for questions. It was because we had to divide it once you said, oh, those numbers are wrong. So then we went, okay, so we then went back and calculated how much the per diem was working out to per hour, which was for the mayor, $50.45 before preparation, and for council, $54.08 before preparation, for preparing for meetings. So then, using that same formula, we went back and said the mayor's receiving $25.23, and councilors are receiving $27.04. Once we divided that, then we went, okay, what's happening over on the other side is why we went there. Because we didn't, first we just rolled it in. I don't know if that helps. Go ahead, Al.
Can I ask you, sir, how do you feel, is honorarium equally or fairly paid amongst, well, it's probably an unfair question because you're going to say yes, that we're all doing our fair share to earn that $1,200. We're not sure because we did not get a valid answer or a good answer saying that you're spending 50 hours, somebody else is spending 25 hours to earn this honorarium. We don't know what each of, and if you care to right now, I would be fine with, if you said, sir, I'm spending this many hours, and Councillor Hutchinson said, I'm spending about this many hours on honorarium duties, not per diem, but, because we don't know as to what kind of a workload each of you has that you're being compensated for on the honorarium side of this. We can see, according to this timesheet, exactly what you're being compensated for on your per diem. But I, and maybe each of you don't even know what you're spending on your honorarium side compared to Councillor Schipple. How many hours he's spending on his honorarium side.
And you just got to my next comment and question is how do you come up with those numbers when you don't know?
We don't have numbers associated
Yeah.
with
Exactly.
honorarium.
Right.
And that's why we said that we asked that you might adopt or at least consider.
So
and
how
what
do you know that there's a great disparity between councils?
The questionnaires suggested they are.
Yeah.
The questionnaires suggest they are. There was at least two. There was that comment and another comment. I can dig it up if we want to take the time. But the response to the questionnaires suggested that unless we misread this, when the a counselor should spend at least 10 hours per week to receive honorarium, when they said in response to the question related to honorarium, one respondent suggested that counselors should spend at least 10 hours a week to receive honorarium. And then this is why we went, well, there must be disparity if only attending council meeting and addressing emails. So if they just left it, everybody should be 10 hours, it wouldn't have been. But once they said, if they're only attending these things, and then you go, well, somebody needs to look at that. And we don't have the ability to look at it because it's not even recorded. And that's what we suggested, is it should be recorded so that the honorarium aspect of things is fairly distributed. Interesting enough, someone had said that meeting preparation is part of honorarium, and I don't believe that is when I looked at it, but I don't care. Because when you use the first number, when we rolled all the money in together and said, this is the compensation they're getting, these are the number of hours they're doing for meetings. If they did no honorarium at all, they would still receive honorarium and that money for the meetings. So I don't know, like, we can't give you an answer, we just go by what the responses were. And the responses suggested that that lots of people are putting in long hours and somebody else may not be putting those in. Maybe they are, but then that's why we said to, go ahead.
Just for you, sir, do you feel from the number of hours that you're putting in, are you fairly compensated honorarium-wise for the number of hours you do outside of per
Dan,
diem? Would you?
shut yours off so he can answer.
100%, okay, thank you. Councillor Hutchinson, would you say that your $1,200 is fair compensation for your extra duties that you do?
I don't take that as a fair question, only because I believe amongst all of us on council, we have our own jobs, extras to do. I have time, and I choose to participate in things. I don't have kids at home like some of the others do. I have the time to do it, and I think that we're all pretty much okay with how everybody is taking, if I'm on 4 committees and Marley's only 2, or she's on a committee that doesn't meet regularly. My committees meet more often than not. So, I'm okay with that.
That's right.
I feel like we're not being appreciated for the job that we do, because it just seems like it's always in the forefront. Oh, council's getting paid too much, you get paid too much, you guys don't do anything. And, if you took it to a corporation that has a budget of 24 million, And the people who are making the major decisions for that corporation to work, nobody's gonna be sitting there with a fine tooth comb picking apart, you know, whether it's $45 or $50 an hour that they're making. So, and I did wanna add on that, the numbers are still not correct because of Councillor Boniface had in the month of, January, where he had struggled with his timesheets and had 90 hours put in there, and his actual hours were only 20, and his wage was paid 5,110 when it should only have been 2,075, which comes directly off of our timesheet, our ones that we submit. So that does drop, just for the sake of numbers, that the mayor is getting paid more per hour than councillors, which is rightly so, right?
Okay,
Just, it was just something that I noticed, so.
okay, so there was errors in here.
There's still, but it's a couple dollar difference, that's all I wanted to comment.
Thank you. So maybe I was in error then asking you that question, if you're, because of the, like you say,
He's gonna
Marley.
go around the room,
Yeah.
Counselor Phillips, we'll get to you. If you should shut your light off so that the next person can talk, I promise I'll get to that question. And then I'll give
Okay.
everyone the opportunity, so I'd like to have, cause Counselor Ald and Counselor Hutchinson had that opportunity to answer that. We'll have Counselor Boniface if he feels comfortable. And I'll go to Counselor Capero and go around and I'll go last.
Do I think the honorarium is enough? Sure, it's fine, actually. Just to answer one of your questions on your survey, I didn't sign up for this for the money. If I was doing this for the money, I'd be doing the job that I do every day. This interferes with that. I'm quite pleased with the amount I get. I'm happy with it. I struggle with this stupid computer, so my timesheets aren't always done, and everybody helps me with it. Do I think I can make less? Yeah, as long as you give it to all these other people who actually put in so much more time than I do. I'm probably the least amount of time there is because I'm running a business. But I do attend the meetings, and I spend probably between 10 and 20 hours a week reviewing all of the stuff for the meetings and make sure that I've got the questions in my head, what I want to ask, and go through things. Some weeks it's less because there's not very much on the table. Other weeks there's quite a bit. Now, if we go to a conference or whatever, those are, for me, not so much, so I probably won't go anymore, just because I don't really get anything out of it. But, yeah, you want to take my money away, give it to all them.
We don't
But we
do,
don't.
we don't take anybody's money away.
Thank you, Councillor Boniface.
So I think we'll have Counselor Capero and then
Yeah.
Counselor Phillips answer if you feel comfortable to answer that.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Do you,
Do you feel that the $1,200 is fair compensation for the number of hours that you're putting in on the honorarium side of the budget rather than per diem? Do you think your $1,200 covers the number of hours that you spend?
Some weeks, some months, but I do what I can. For myself, I do have little kids. I have another job, so I can't commit as much time as some of the others do around the table. And I do think that Councillor Hutchinson actually summed it up perfectly with what she said. We do what we can, and I think we are okay if some does a little bit more than the others, and that's, yeah.
thank you, Counselor
Thank you.
Capero.
Thank you. So, as far as the honorarium side of it goes, no, I do not feel it's sufficient, to be honest. Looking at the honorarium, it's not just for agenda preparation. There are times when, and you can ask my wife this, I go to the grocery store with her, and I'm stopped for 20 minutes or half an hour talking to someone about something, you know, whatever the topic of the day is. So I spend 20 minutes or half an hour there, then I go to the bank, and I get another 20 minutes, and then I go to the car wash, and I get another 15 minutes, and this is something that happens all the time, which is part of our job. That is part of the honorarium, is those hours and time that you're spent. And there's a cost not just to myself from a time point of view, but I'm actually with my spouse at that particular time, and there's a cost to her, because she's got to sit and wait for me, because I'm not gonna cut a resident short when they're asking me a question. I'm gonna answer their questions. So it's, you know, it's agenda packages, which is substantial. Counselor Auld showed you the size of the one agenda package. And typically, they're all like that. I know we have ICC meetings this week. The agenda packages are almost 2 inches thick. So I believe that we all have the same agenda packages. We all have to prepare the same amount of time. We all get the conversations at the grocery stores and the banks, and, you know, you're at a social event and having fun, and someone wants to talk to you about the topic. So that's common between all of us. And also emails. We get hundreds and hundreds of emails every week, hundreds, that we are reading. And some we have to respond to, some are just reading information, some are updates from Mr. Kraus on, you know, ongoings in the town that we need to be kept abreast of. So there is a lot of time spent reading emails, like just simply sitting there reading emails. So from a honorarium point of view, no, I do not believe that that is sufficient. 10 hours a week, I think, is quite easy for anyone to spend 10 hours a week doing agenda packages, talking to the public, emails. I think that's quite easy. I'm just looking in the last 2 weeks. Last week I told you I did 15 hours. This week I'm doing 12 hours. So that's 27 hours of honorarium work in 2 weeks. And that doesn't include the rest of the month. So to answer that question, no, I feel the honorarium is not in line. And even just looking at the honorarium, just the honorarium portion, I'm just picking the council portion out of that. If you look at just the honorarium portion, we are ranked 14th out of 18 in the honorarium side of it.
What, I don't know if you have the information. What does the other side, the per diem side rank then? When you, the total compensation,
Well, the total compensation, that's another question I have, because we don't get any health benefits or healthcare coverage or CPI indexes, because there hasn't been any of that for the last 5 years. Vehicle allowances, but looking at this, there are a number of communities that get health benefits, health spending, whether it's a wellness account that they get to spend money on. Communications, which we used to get a communications amount, but we don't anymore. And there are 6 communities that receive that. Vehicle allowances are becoming an issue because it costs a lot of money to run our personal vehicles. And, you know, just for myself, I know going to the various events and various things that I go to, I'm using my personal vehicle. And I'm just taking this, equating it back to a town employee, if they were using their own vehicle, they would receive $7.50 to use that vehicle, which we do not. So I hope that answers your question. That's what I have to say on that matter.
Might I ask, what do you feel would be a fair? Do you have a figure in mind if this 1,200 is low? Just, if you don't care to answer at this point, I don't mind, Councillor Phillips.
I would hesitate to answer that simply because I would want to look more in depth into the health and the benefits side of it and the communication side of it and the vehicle allowance side of it. Because what we're looking at here is data from 2021, and we're in 2023 now. Any adjustment to this is probably going to happen in 2024. So this data is going to be 3 years old. So I'd be hesitant to answer that question based on 3-year-old data.
just kind of from my perspective as the task force, it isn't for us to decide one way or the other whether the honorarium needs to go up, down, or indifference. What we're saying is that the total compensation seems to be very fair. Let's finish this discussion, then I'd like to talk about health spending and all of those, what we did there. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Chappelle.
Thank you. So, just to back the bus up a little, I question about process, because my impression was after the last time we discussed this is that we're going to have open dialogue, and then in the middle of that we got another report from you and an email from the mayor. And so I really thought today was going to be more about what do you want to see in it, because I think where council's at is we want to get a document at the end of the day that is self-renewing basically every 4 years with things such as CPI or whatever it might be. Some towns tied into whatever they give their staff, they get. So I read through all those reports, and there's some real nice snippets in there that would be nice in our final program. Many of them talk about in year 3, this review happens automatically with a group of 3 like we have here. And then there's things such as, you know, if you're invited to a social event, your spouse gets paid. If it's an event where the spouse gets paid the entry fee, or if there's a fee whatsoever. There's another one where Vegreville had, if you're on a webinar, you get paid same as a council meeting for a webinar. And so there, a lot of stuff is webinars now. And so I can watch it here on my computer, or I can go to Edmonton and sit there in person. I get paid if I sit there in person. If I sit here and watch it, I don't get paid, and I'm not so sure that that's right. And so when I look through some of the snippets in there, I tried to grab some of the, what I thought was more pertinent things that would be kind of neat to incorporate here to get a document that's living, and that we don't have to sit here, because ours hasn't been reviewed for a lot of years, way prior to my time here. So I look at it and go like, what we're trying to accomplish and what we got, I think there's a bit of a difference in there. So that's where my question comes on process, because I think at the end we need to get a document that we can move forward on and not have this discussion, because it's painful for all of us. And I just sit there and go like, how do we make that happen? So, I mean, a lot of those documents list all the committees there are, and what you get paid for and what you don't get paid for. And so ours doesn't per se list that, although there's something that lists something that I'm not sure where that's at. So in terms of the first question, is the remuneration package or the compensation package fair? I'm okay with it, but I think it could be tweaked in terms of some of the stuff that we do. Councillor Phillips talked about gas, for example. You know, could there be a vehicle allowance? Some of the communities have it, some don't. Some communities have time for prep. You get paid for doing your prep. The first few I read through didn't, and then all of a sudden I ran into 3 in a row that all paid for prep time for council meetings. So I look at it and I go, it's difficult to read because every community is so different in how they look after everything. But there are some points in those communities that I think are worthy of us including in our documents here, and trying to get this thing to a point where we're not having this discussion. And somehow where the increments happen automatically, let it be tied to the staff, let it be tied to something. And that's not in here anywhere in your report. And so I think that
It
if moving.
is. Sorry, but it is, but go ahead, I'll point out after.
So I think that moving forward, I think, in my mind, what we're trying to accomplish here is to get to an in place where we get this document that keeps going on and forever. So that's what I was hoping. I don't think we're there. I know there was so many of the communities have got different setups. It's so hard to say that. How do you? Like, I know you got it rated there by something that somebody else has done, but when I read them all and tried to figure it out from what they were doing, yeah, it was definitely somewhat complicated. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Chappelle. Did you want to shut your light off? So,
I apologize, sorry about that. We did address what would be CPI, like Consumer Price Index. We did address a formula that we felt would allow moving forward to be, if it's adopted by the council, mayor and council, that would address that. Sorry? In the document, I'll look and see, but it's in the document unless it didn't print. What the suggestion was that the fourth year of term, that mayor and council is a contract position that's taken on at the fourth year of term. Pardon? Did you find it here?
It's in point number 3.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
We said, in the final year of the term, mayor and council can determine the appropriate increase for the new upcoming term if an adjustment is needed based on the touchstone. So if the CPI has gone up 10% over those past 4 years, then at that point, the new council would be given the raise of 10% or 20%, whatever it has gone up. Our feeling was that when you were elected, you knew what the compensation, that first meeting in October, you were told your honorarium, or maybe you even asked prior to running for election, you ask about the per diem and the honorarium. So you, but that, from what I understand, that was not the key thing for why you people all ran. You had more altruistic, more community-minded spirit reasons for running. And then this is the perk that came with it, with that side. And so now our feeling was, and this is our feeling, you people have the right at the end of the day to decide, no, we're not going to accept that recommendation. These are only recommendations. And so our feeling was that basically at that time, October 19th, you signed up and you knew the compensation, almost like a contract. And then over the years, yes, things went wrong, the CPI has gone up or dropped or whatever, interest rates have gone up on your mortgages and everything else. And so you're saying, well, then we deserve or are entitled to an increase each year. And that would be your prerogative to decide that. Our thought was, at the end of the 4-year, then you decide what the next council should be paid. That was our feeling.
And to flesh that out just a little further, right now, it's been brought up a number of times, and this hopefully will be in a forum where people will be able to hear this. There's, my understanding, it's been 5 years since there's been any increase. Even with that, so 2 years ago in '21, this mayor and council was paid 5th on a scale of 18. So we're already still remained in the top third of mayors and council in comparative communities. So regardless of whether or not a raise had come in, they were still in the top third. You folks are in the top third. So we're looking at that and saying there isn't any need to review from the perspective of the task force. We said once we get below the median, then I think there's a need to review. Like you're looking at comparative communities and this council is getting paid in the bottom third. That doesn't make any sense. The recommendation to do it in the 4th year for the incoming council, although it isn't in written recommendation, we talked about it, is that, let's say a CPI is 2% a year. We're already above the median. So then you have to go, okay, what would it take? 2% times 4 years is we're down 8%. So if you took the median as $10,000 and you want to be 4% above 10,000 is $400. So now the next time that the mayor and council will be 400, what that would allow is for the first 2 years, theoretically, if it continued at 2%, for the next 2 years you would be above, and the following 2 years you would be below. We don't want the council to be underpaid. We want them to be compensated fairly and in line with other communities, which means the medium, the average of those communities is a real good point of contact to look at and say, okay, the mayor's getting this much and the councilors are getting that much. If you use that, you won't have to revisit this ever. If you say, yep, we're gonna use CPI for the last 4 years, we're gonna cut the CPI in half, we're gonna calculate the average of all these communities and add 4% onto that average, that's what what mayor and council is going to make if CPI was 4%. Last year CPI was 4.3% for the year. I'm talking, that 4% I was talking was over 4 years, right? It's 2% a year. We're talking that's 18% almost, 17.2, I believe. And that 17.2% puts this mayor and council, if it's 4.3, a long ways behind, all the way in. But the next folks that come again, attraction and retention, would be, I'll round that up to 18 for an easy calculation, would be 9% above the average communities is what we're suggesting. But certainly it's
You people have the final decision as to how this is going to play out.
and Dale, I apologize, sorry. I was right in the middle of your sentence and I went, sorry.
Okay, so,
That's in there.
I think that gives us lots to, we do have another delegation here in 5 minutes.
Okay.
So what I'm gonna suggest is that I will skip my comments on it, because I think council summed it up quite fairly. Does anyone on council have any specific questions that we need to clear up before we let the task force go for this evening?
Not a question, just a comment. I agree that in the fourth year of the term, that should be set for the next term, because this is a very difficult conversation around this table. I agree with that one wholeheartedly.
Okay.
Yeah. I wanted to again, thank you very much for your time. And it, you know, how you analyze this information actually helps us, I think, for how we could make the decisions moving forward. I think that it's given us a good perspective, and I think looking at even just this chart that you referred to, where we're like the only one that says CPI isn't included, that I think that will be something that we look at in the future, even if it doesn't happen, say today, based on the data, but we could set a date where it should be reviewed or something
Awesome.
like that. Yeah, so we will look over your report, and thank you so very much for your dedication and time. And I know it's very difficult to talk about someone's own wages with them in such a public forum, so I really appreciate your candor and your patience with us, and and donating your time for this project. Thank you.
I did have one thing to really thank mayor and council for. The transparency to be able to have this committee of a whole, I think that's the right committee we're on, in a public forum like this, and the vote the other day is just top notch. That just allows the community to hear what's going on, and just tremendous of mayor and council to approve that approach to just talking about it. Nobody's trying to, in this case, we want to make sure our mayor and council are well compensated in the same form. So thank you for that vote the other day, because it really helps the public.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Thanks.
So, does anybody want to have a 5-minute break before we move on, or are we okay to continue forward? Okay, so how about a 5-minute break? So,
Just make sure our live stream has resumed here, and then we are live again now.
thank you very much. So, welcome back. We're resuming the June 13th Committee of the Whole meeting. We have a second delegation this evening. The Helen Hunley Foundation with Tammy Cote is with us this evening. And we have been discussing previously a project at Riverside Park. And in front of us, we all have the drawings for that project. So, Mr. Kraus, did you want to start us off? Because we've,
Sure.
yes, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So it was an initiative of council to explore enhancing Riverside Park, to allow more people to utilize it, make it more attractive for visitors to come and explore. So what council initiated was a concept plan that explored different options or nodes throughout the Riverside Park. And those are the drawings in front of council. In 2023, council did budget for improvements, but we haven't specified which improvements that council wants to see. So in the 2023 budget, there's $200,000, there's $100,000 from the town, and there's $100,000 donation from Helen Hunley. So the discussion tonight is really based on is what is acceptable to Ms. Cote and what is acceptable for council of how we want to proceed and which, if any, project proceeds this year.
Thank you very much. And so, it's a bit unusual because we've presented this before, but did you want to speak towards the project and what you would like to see moving forward, or would you like to have questions? However you feel comfortable.
Sure. I really didn't come prepared to speak tonight, actually.
Okay.
Because I've been waiting, I think, a couple of years, actually.
Yeah.
So I really wasn't sure what this conversation was about. I should have asked a few more questions. I apologize.
No,
I could have
that's
come
totally,
better prepared.
and I don't mean to put you on the spot either,
No.
because it's just how the meeting process works, but we can totally open it up to discussion and questions, if that would be more comfortable, or we could move on. Mr. Kraus, could we just move on and then go to like the discussions? But then it would be hard to include Ms. Cote, yeah.
So, Your Worship, this is committee of the whole, so the whole purpose of committee of the whole is to have the open discussions on the project. So, just like we did with the task force previously, so there's no real set agenda. I think it's more or less throwing ideas around.
Okay.
To see if we can land on something to proceed.
Thank you very much for the clarification. I really appreciate that. So you're off the hook. You don't have to present anything, and then we're here to have the discussion then.
Perfect, that sounds good. And, I'm happy to hear, like, when we talked about this last, I know it was just a conversation that needed to be had amongst council, and that there was some things to be worked out, I think is how it was left. If I remember correctly, the last time I was here, we talked about the different options in the various areas and what town council would like to see as a priority. And I honestly I'm not leaning towards anything. What I would like is, from your perspective, to put the money where it's gonna be best used in this project. So I'm excited to hear what you guys think that might be, and I'm hoping that there's some thoughts.
So perfect. I see that we have like 3 lights already going. So we can only have so many lights going at the same time. So I think what we'll do is we'll start off, maybe, Counselor Schipel, could I let you go last? Because I'm thinking that this is the most new to you, the project's most new, and the questions
That
that,
was exactly my question, because I'm new. I'm hoping somebody can give me the Reader's Digest version
Okay.
of where we got to here and bring me
Okay.
up to speed, because at this point, I'm sort of a fish out of water.
okay.
So if I could ask for that, that'd be awesome.
So, yeah, absolutely. So maybe, Counselor Phillips, because you were on council before when this project got started, and would you like to discuss the different nodes and sort of where we're at? Or did you want to ask questions and I just want to catch Counselor Chappelle up.
Okay.
But it can be anybody that has that conversation first.
I mean, the Coles Note version, on the map you have, there's node 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's the parking lot. The parking lot, and correct me if I'm wrong, the last discussions we had, the parking lot, because it's going to be quite an expensive venture to do the parking lot, that would be one of the very last things to be done, and we would focus on, nodes 1, 2, 3, and 4 at this point. That's the Coles Note version of it. From my input, I think node 4 should be probably the last node that we look at, because nodes 1, 2, and 3 are gonna be more utilized, by more people than the node 4 would be. The node 4 is more of a, kind of a skating slash, more of a, it can be used all year round, but I think node 4 was also the most expensive of the, not quite. So looking at the ones, node 3 from the, and these are the dollar amounts I had from the last time we had this.
Yeah,
Node-
that's where you brought them, because I
yeah,
did not
node
bring
3
mine.
was, and this was a couple years ago, 2021. We were looking roughly about $85,000 to do node 3, $640,000 to do node 1, and about $830,000 to do node 2. About 830,000. So to me, the node 3, because it's primarily picnic tables and smaller type things, I was just gonna look at Mr. Kraus for this. Is that something that we could more or less take on from an operational point of view? And then we can focus our dollars onto nodes 1 and 2? Is that?
So, yeah, Your Worship, so, yeah, node 3, I don't think we were really considering as a node to do. It's just something we would work on.
Yeah. Okay. So then, really, from my point of view, we're looking at nodes 1 and 2 and what we should and shouldn't be doing in those nodes. I know we have an amphitheater in node 2, which would be lovely to have. However, that's quite an expensive item to put into a node. I'm thinking maybe we should start on a less grandeur scale for now, looking at dollar amounts that we want to put in. And, maybe start with getting node 3 done as we do it from a town point of view. And nodes 1 and 2, maybe we pick some of the smaller items that we can do right away, and things like an amphitheater can maybe get put into phase 2 or phase 3 of a project.
Counselor Chappelle, have you ever seen the itemized list? Is there a way we could just send that email right now with that? Yeah. So that we just all have the same document as Counselor Phillips for the discussion? I thought it would, and so I think I'm gonna go to Counselor Ald, because he had his light on. Did you still have a question or a comment?
Not a question, comments. Much with where Councillor Phillips going. Note 3 is something that is pretty feasibly done just with town staff and just some small additions. If we are gonna invest money, I think that node 2, with the way everything floods down there and the ice, I would have loved to have seen a huge development down there, but I don't think it's feasible with the amount of flooding and the ice jams and whatnot down there. But node 2, we could definitely have something done down there to enhance that park. Some new amenities, whatnot, but I would love to see something more down there for the kids. Yeah, that's about it.
Thank you very much. Counselor Hutchinson.
So definitely taking into consideration our flood area that happened this year is a good example of, I think, pretty much as far, the distance that we can go. My thoughts are kind of scrap this whole idea and make it a little bit simpler. I thought upgrading the playground, maybe adding possibly the little fire fire pit things, picnic tables, closer to the, I guess it would be, well, to the top of the map, which would be the east side. Another thought would be if there was a way of getting power to that top end and be able to do Christmas lights, decorations, and you could have a pathway around that had, you know, something like that for in the winter to have a nice little winter walk. I mean, ideally, that would be beautiful right along the river, so you could be, you know, see the reflection, but and again, with the flooding and the ice jams in that area, that might be just a waste of money. But just to kind of scale it down, possibly with the, not the parking lot, but on the pond one there, where there's a few more increased parking spots there, so that people could then access, well, I guess we can't really access across the highway, can we?
You, actually, when you're there, when you park in the yellow zone, you go underneath
Yeah.
the bridge. Yeah.
But that could be an issue if we went to the next level where we had power and were able to do a little Christmas display. People going down underneath the bridge to get around that way wouldn't work. And there's really no option, I don't believe there would be option to put parking on the top end on the north side of 11A.
Correct.
There's just no room or anything for that. So, you know, whatever we design there, we have to keep in mind that it is a Highway 11 right through there. So that's kind of the direction I was leaning.
Thank you. So I'll just catch up to speed. We did have a lot of flooding down there this year in particular. So I'm along in the tooth, and originally that was one of the things that I said, and it was, so you can see that it was a little bit of a change of where we think our priorities are. Because there was such a flooding problem down there this year that we were aware of, because administration had to bring some of the issues that came about to us, it sort of changed our enthusiasm a little bit.
Yes. No,
because of the issues. I just want you to know where that's coming from, because you might have not have known we've had a lot of flooding issues down there this year.
Yeah, I wasn't here actually, so I
Yeah.
wasn't aware of how bad it was. I knew it had happened, but I didn't get the details by any stretch. And you know, I mean, I love the river myself, and I
Yeah.
like spending time there.
Yeah.
And I know that people are there, so it
Yeah.
makes sense to me to have amenities there that people are going to use. But I'm as invested in you in making sure that these funds are invested wisely. I don't, you know, I have to be honest, I don't wanna pay for picnic tables.
Yeah.
I don't think that's really the spirit of what we were looking to accomplish when Helen and I talked about these things.
Yeah.
So, if this just has to go by the wayside, or if there needs to be adjustments to it, I'm okay with that. And if there's other worthy projects that the town is working on,
Right.
I'm okay to consider those things too. Like I do like this idea.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I like the river, and I think it's, we're lucky to have it, and so
Yeah.
making the most of it makes sense, but maybe that's not the right place for it either. And so, I'm happy to hear that you're considering those things. And
Yeah, yes, and it was a change.
Yeah.
You know, we've had a little bit of a change from, say, a year ago.
Right.
We definitely know that people are using it. It's also an area that we want to make sure that any money that we do put into it is long-lasting.
Yes.
Because it's a little bit of an isolated area. The concern that I have with, you know, Christmas lights is that they're damaging them on Main Street, and it's a very busy traffic location. We are looking at doing some things for Christmas lights around we're getting lights on the oval through the football club, and maybe putting a display up there around the skating rinks and stuff too. But not to take away from this project, we can still talk about ideas that we see down here, and then whatever feedback you give us, we're fine.
Right.
We're open to anything that you say.
Good.
Okay.
I'm okay to leave some of this stuff. I have to be honest, like I wasn't, there was parts of it that I was excited about, but I wasn't excited about all of it.
Okay.
But I am deferring to town council's judgment, honestly, because I feel like you guys hear more from people than Rocky than I do.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think maybe we do just table the idea for now, unless
Yeah.
there's something that's, you know, pressing down there. What about, like, I know there's washrooms on the north side of the road. Most of the people that are using that area, when the weather's good, are on the south side of the road. Is there, and there's no washrooms on that side. It's not that it's so long, is that something that is worthy of consideration?
Mr. Cross, that's not part of the original study, was it? To put it in 1, 2, or 3 washrooms?
Well, there's a washroom.
There is on the north side.
It's up by number 2, between 2 and 3, isn't it?
Sorry, I think it's sitting in 3, your worship. But I think you're talking on the other side by the parking lot.
Yeah, I just wondered, I mean, in the summer, it's convenient, it's okay, you can get to that side, but I suspect that lots of people don't.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Anyways,
It's
I'll
tough
leave-
because it's such a,
Yeah.
it's such a tiny, like, not that it's a tiny area, it's a beautiful area, but it's hard to do what we envision because of the flood, because it's so low there.
Right.
I really like the idea of enhancing some more picnic tables. I know that I've met down there with the groups. The Friendship Center sometimes will have events down there, the Soquin Center. I've met with seniors down there, and there is just the 2 picnic tables at number 3. It's the orange dot, I think, where the picnic tables currently are. I know that's maybe not your vision of what would be suitable for what,
Yeah.
but
It's not for these funds, no.
Yeah.
It's not, so, if another project comes up, I'm happy to discuss those things too. Or I also know that, the pump track is ongoing. I don't know what the status of that is at this point, but, if that's something that is deemed worthy of discussion, you know, I'd be happy to listen to that too, but.
yeah. The,
We can leave that for right now. That's not a conversation that has to be had now.
okay, but, that sounds fair. Does anybody else wanna have anything, comments or anything to say this evening about the project, or? We can certainly tell you about other projects that we have going on. The pump track is working towards their final goals, and I mean, we don't have to discuss that now. Now, Counselor Phillips, did you?
Yeah, just when, you know, when we're on the topic of the park down here, you know, with the exception of picnic tables, maybe enhancing the trail a little bit, I think, you know, some waste receptacles and stuff like that, I think that's definitely needed for sure. The only one, I guess, from a structure point of view that I would like to see down there is something similar to what we have up by the Lusopet Center. Not as big, of course, because that's too big for what would be needed down there.
You're talking about the gazebo?
Either a gazebo or more of like a cookhouse or something that people can go down there and have a family picnic or family camp out or something like that. Not a camp out, because we
Like
can't
at Ram
camp down
Falls?
there.
Like Crimson Lake used to have? Like Ram Falls has that cookhouse at the top.
Crimson Lake does have one right now. It's basically a cookhouse where there's a barbecue inside. If it's raining, it'll keep rain off of you. It's not enclosed by any means. It's not, but something like a cookhouse down there, I think, would be a good addition to go along with the picnic tables and enhanced trail and things like that.
Council's very quiet tonight. Normally, we have a very energetic and boisterous a group, but I think you kind of see where we're at, where you know, we want to do the best job that we can for our community and keeping your vision in mind as well. And if the location, you know, it's location. If the location's maybe not ideal, I'm sure there's other projects, and we can keep working, you know, in partnership to whatever is the most suitable for everybody.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Counselor Chabot, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, being that I'm just coming to the table now and learning about this, and And looking at the prices, I go like wowsies, like it's crazy.
It is expensive.
I think it's a unique part of our community, and does it need enhancing? I think it does. I think a scaled-back version of something more required in the area makes sense, some upgrades. And if that was to happen, would that interest you at all, depending what the upgrades look like? And got rid of some of the crazy price tags that are on this, so just something to make it nice and,
It's something that people will use, and you know, even at cookhouse, I don't know how often people picnic down there. Like, that's not something that I've seen, honestly. The part that and maybe it's because it's so visible, it's the south side of the highway that's so visible that people are using. And, yeah, I think that was, so that's, from my perspective, that's the part that looks like it needs more. And would people use other services if they were down there? You know, that part I don't know. At one point, somebody was talking about, you know, if there was power down there, maybe there would be an opportunity to put some kind of like a little kiosk or a food truck or something like that down there that people would use during the summer. And if some of these other things were there and they were using them, then that would facilitate that more in the year, you know, more year-round,
Capacity.
yeah.
Yeah, because even sometimes the ice comes up and you can't sneak underneath the
No,
bridge to cross the other
exactly.
side, and it's a busy.
In the winter, no, you're not going to, and so those are the kinds of things that, you know, I hoped might
Be resolved.
Well, or that would be attractive to
Yeah.
people if they wanted to use it, in the winter. And, I mean, the Note 4, I remember feeling a little bit of sticker shock when I looked at all of it too, all of it. I honestly did not anticipate the price tag that I was looking at, but Note 4 is one of those things that would make it a more year-round destination.
Right.
And would facilitate some of those other things that were being suggested. And I don't think Note 4 actually suffers the flooding that high up either, but, you know, if it's not seen as something that the community's gonna use, then,
Yeah.
no, I don't want to spend the money on it either.
And there was a little bit of feedback, and there always is with any project,
Of course.
about Node 4, and I don't remember who it was, but it was like, try to keep it natural, right? Like.
Yeah. Yes.
So with the, it was easy when the heavy price tag came in, it was like, oh, that's easy to satisfy.
Exactly.
You know, cause it
Yeah.
makes things better. So Counselor Phillips, did you have an elastic, oh, your light is
I think
on.
Councillor
Oh, sorry,
Hutchinson's on before
Counselor
me.
Hutchinson.
I was gonna comment that we did have feedback, but how I understood that feedback, it was the natural, keep it in a natural state, everything on the north side of the bridge. And I too like the idea of the pond. I didn't like the price tag, but I thought that would be an area that could be expensive, but more, I think would get used more. And then another thought was some type of like doing signage along the trail through the trees that would be like a nature walk and and again, it could be something that we can just do on a town level, but you know, you're walking and this is
Like it's if
a
they're
birch
falls.
tree, or this is this kind of plant, or it could be something that could be partnered with our Indigenous neighbors on medicines or things that they use or something along that line. So that was another thought I had.
Sifter Falls does that, as you walk along that first part of the trail, they have those big boards, that's a great idea. Counselor Phillips.
Yes, just to answer Tammy's question about the utilization down there. Right now, it's a walking trail. Like that's basically what it is down there. It's typically a walking trail. So people will go in there, do the loop, and come back out.
Yeah, no, I have used it.
Yes, yeah, I think we probably all have. Most towns that have a river like we have running through it have some form of a park or some gathering area down there where people can take their family and go down and enjoy a barbecue and spend some time down there as opposed to just a walking path. So I do believe if we enhance it, add more picnic tables, a cookhouse I think would definitely enhance the usage down there, because now you can get a family, multi-families going down there and having a barbecue for the afternoon. Or you can have the Girl Guides or Scouts or somebody going down there and having an event down there in an afternoon, because now there's a place to hold it. So I do think if we went down that road, I think the utilization would have a big uptake down there.
How would you improve the access on that side of the road though? Because if
That's-
you're going for a barbecue, you got a cooler that you're gonna be dragging.
Yeah, you have
You're
to drag it,
talking.
exactly, and that
Like-
is
like-
a concern for sure.
Yeah, like at Ram Falls, it's 10 feet. You park and it's 10 feet to that little cookhouse. Same with Crimson Lake. It's
Is there
it's just tough that the landscaping, because of the hills and the cliffs and the flooding, like at Bower Ponds and Red Deer, they're 25 feet above, right? Like they're quite high. Drumheller just actually bought all the homes along their floodplain and are knocking them down. That's what they were working on for the last, I don't know how long, to give, so that, oh no, the river's never flooded, and then you have pictures of guys standing on the roof. Counselor Ald.
Going back to your comment, Tammy, about having something on the south side, this whole project first started, that was my vision too. Like, it's a big open grassy area, and I can't remember, it's a couple of years ago now, but there was a reason why we couldn't put a shack or a building on that side. And do you recall that? Because it didn't get included in this at all. And I'm trying to remember why we couldn't.
Does it have something to do with the train?
No.
Because that's exactly what I had envisioned, like a nice amphitheater down there right on that grassy knoll, and having usable all summer, and have people stay on that side.
Yeah.
Have a washroom there, have a nice park for people to go to. But when they come back with this report, I believe there was a reason why, but off the top, I can't remember why.
So, just to, here, there is a study that's gonna be done 2024, I believe it is, for the water treatment plant, for, storage ponds. We don't know where that's going, but it is something that the, environment is, that they're gonna implementing for us, for the water that we put.
Right, we had to put in a pond of some kind or something
But we
right there.
don't know the size or anything to do with that.
I think you're getting the, just wait on that comment.
No, I'm getting
Up front.
to the mud.
Oh, to the mic.
So, that's kind of where we're at with the south side of the property.
Did you want to say that again?
Sure. The environment has, reached out to the town and they want us to do a study on the water, after it's treated. There's the, effluent that goes back into the river, and it has to meet certain specs, and they want us to be able to store it on site for, yeah, they're settling ponds, and we don't know where they're going, whether it has to be pumped, uphill, anything. Right at this point, we haven't started the study yet.
That might, the water treatment plant and all this,
Right, that would
like
definitely be a problem.
infrastructure might be part of the issue, so that sounds reasonable. Thank you so much for answering that question for us with your long tooth memory.
A couple of the other issues we do have down there, with the flooding is the parking lot. It's not really adequate to, host, any events. There's no parking along the highway to get people down there safely. We do have a lot of, huge tankers going into the water treatment plant to access the bulk fill, and that seems to be getting busier all the time. To be able to have a parking lot towards Node 4 would really hamper that access for the big trucks and everything as well.
In Alberta, some of the issues, like even the William Grounds, they couldn't get a permit to suck water out of the river this year. Their Environment Canada, or whoever's in charge of water, is making it more difficult, and we're gonna find as a town, municipality, we're gonna be selling a lot more water to meet the demands of industry and whatnot.
What about the other side of the river? It's more accessible. There's already a facility over there.
Yeah, so everything on the other side of the river, like on the western Husky side,
Yeah.
is owned by the county, if I'm correct about that. And then there's APCO, own a bunch of land because they're paving that road and they moved the trail way over because of insurance. Whoever owns the dam. Is that right, Mr. Crowe?
Yeah, so the river is the boundary between the town and county, so it's county side except for North Saskatchewan River Park, which we own, but it's in the county.
It's interesting when we have conversations like that. So,
Okay.
however, we're always looking, to do improvements down at that park.
Well, if you've worked with the town, if you've worked with the county to come up with the North Saskatchewan River Park, I suspect that there's room for another conversation if there's a will. And so,
Especially after the rodeo, I think they have a longer list.
so, alrighty, I think by the sounds of things, this is just gonna get set aside for right now, and it's here in trust, and I have every confidence that town council will eventually find a great opportunity to use it, so.
Thank you very much for your time, I really appreciate it.
Alrighty, thank you.
That was off. Okay, so we'll move forward in the agenda. We are at 4.1, to adopt the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes for April 11th of 2023. We not have a meeting at all in May? Oh, yeah, okay. Sorry. Does anybody have any concerns with those minutes as they were? Counselor Phillips?
No, I was just gonna make a motion to adopt the minutes from the April 11th Committee of the Whole meeting.
Okay. Seeing there's no other questions or comments, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So moving forward in delegation 5.1, I think this is something that council can review. Do you want to discuss it now? Some comments that we think that we want to move forward, or do we want to just accept for information? Counselor Phillips, did you have a comment?
I definitely think this should be a service level / budget discussion in the fall. That's just I think this needs to be discussed then.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? No, so we're looking for a motion to accept for information. And a second one to bring this to service level. Did anyone want to make? I can make that motion. So I make a motion that we accept for information the delegation for the Council Remuneration Review Task Force, and that we put on service level the review of council remuneration. Any questions or comments about that motion? No. Not unless you have a problem with them. So, no comments or questions, then I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So, old business, Riverview, 5.2. I put a check mark before we did it. Counselor Auld?
I'll just make the motion that we accept the Riverside Park delegation as information.
Thank you very much. All in favor? If there's no questions or comments, I'll call that to a vote.
No.
Counselor Hutchinson?
Could we amend that to have that brought back to service level as well? Would it be service level that we would discuss improvements or anything we want to do?
Well, we already have budget money there, so we don't have to discuss it. It can just,
I'm just clarifying, that's all.
Yeah, so your worship, so council did budget for a $200,000 project in 2023, so we'd be looking for some direction whether that project's on hold, or we have to come back with a revised version, or council wants to, what you want to do with it. It can go to service level, for discussion, and that project just doesn't occur in 2023.
my comment is that we just put it on hold. We have a lot going on, and we're not really ready there yet. I don't wanna take the money away if there's little things we could do with our own budgeting. Counselor Phillips and then Counselor Caprero.
Just, I mean, right now, there's really nowhere, there's a couple of picnic tables and that's it. And that's kind of all we have down there. It would be nice to see a couple of extra picnic tables in the node 3 area, not, you know, not in the node 1 or 2 area, but just some extra seating so that people can actually, when they're walking down there, have a place to sit. I don't know if that's something that council would like to see or not, but just to have something more down there in the way of seating. You know, even by the playground that's down there now, maybe to have a couple picnic tables there.
Counselor Caprero and then Counselor All.
I agree with Counselor Phillips. I don't necessarily want to just throw this on the back burner. It is a great space down there, and so I would like to see, I think it's a bigger discussion. Each node has good aspects to it, so I am just wondering if maybe we look at a revised concept here, or maybe we can pick and choose certain things that we like from each, but I would, if service level is good with everyone, like, I just want to see us still talk about it. And I like Councillor Phillips' idea of adding a few extra things this year. I'm not sure what's the best way to go about it, but I don't want to just see it kind of shelved and then not talked about again. Like, I think there's key things here that would really enhance down there that shouldn't be overly expensive. So whether it's service level or we have another conversation on a different date and time about it, but yeah, I just don't want to see it get completely put on the back burner.
Counselor All.
I 100% agree with both Councillor Phillips and Caprero. But the Helen Hunley Foundation isn't going to use those funds for picnic tables. That would be a totally separate budget item. I would like to have more conversation about it as well. And I would amend my motion to accept for information and bring back to service level for more discussion.
Does that give administration enough information to move forward?
Yep. We won't do anything on the project this year. It will just be another discussion at service level.
Okay.
So just a question for Mr. Kraus. So those funds that have been allocated in the 2023 budget, would that roll over into 2024? Would that?
If council wants to roll over the project, yes, it
Okay.
would roll over, because our 100,000 is out of reserves, and then, of course, we're just holding in trust the other 100,000.
So if there's no more discussion about the motion on the table, seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So that concludes 5.2. Moving on forward to old business, we have 6.1, the RFD for Riverview Phase 2, the residential development. Thank you, Dean Schrader.
Good evening, Mayor Bache and Council. Just before you tonight in regards to an RFD for Riverview Phase 2B Phase 1 residential development construction costs. At the May 2nd council meeting, council gave administration direction to get opinion of probable costs for Phase 1 Riverview Phase 2 with funds coming from the unrestricted surplus. So if I can direct you to the financial section on page 4 of 6. So in that financial section, I've taken this chart from the report from Stantec in regards to the costs of 25 lots for Phase 1 of Phase 2 of Riverview. As you can see in the numbers there, in 2023, for 25 lots, the average price would be $181. Total cost was $4.5 million. But that number does not include engineering, contingency, as well as GST.
It also doesn't include the full price of the lift station, because we can put that over the other things, right?
Correct. So as far as the lift stations, it's listed in there for $842,000. To be proportioned out correctly, there's 142 lots still that would be using that lift station, but we're only building 25 lots for that. So those numbers were proportioned out for $5,770 per lot for each one of those lots. So you do 25 lots at $5,700. So the cost of the lift station for the 25 lots is $144,000. So my math, the way I've done it, offsite levies are incurred for these 25 lots as well. It's a 2-hectare parcel. At current offsite levies would be $67,000 per hectare, which would give it a total of $134,000 in offsite levies, which when divided by 25 lots is $53.78 per lot. Okay, so on the top of page 5, I broke down the number of construction costs by the number of lots. Page 5 of 6. So construction costs were $56.95. Sorry, 5.6. I'll say $5.7 million. Offsite levy costs were added to that, which gave it to a total of $55.8 million. So I put a little asterisk by the $5.7 million as below how I came up with that number. I had $6.2 million, which was the total costs as far as what Stantec provided. I minus the lift station for the other 121 lots that's not part of the 146 lots that's left over. Came up with the $5.7 million. So cost per lot, I came up with $5.8 million divided by the 25 lots. Came out to $233,000 per lot for costs. Okay. Cost per lot I also did it with no contingency costs included. But I did include the engineering costs as well as the GST, and as you can see, I included the offsite levies in there as well. So I took the $5.3 million and divided by 25 lots, which lowered it to $215,000 per lot. So I'm not sure if anybody wants to question my math or not, but I tried to provide the best numbers that was provided. Questions?
Yeah, the only question I had
Yep.
is, if we did the whole project, does it impact the price of the initial lots? It doesn't, right?
If we did all the phases?
Yeah,
I can't answer that without the numbers. I guess I only got the numbers for phase 1. So I don't know what the numbers would be.
so on the, like on this, well, I don't know what, page 2 of 13 on that document, it says 25 would be 181, 743, 57 would be 168, 829. Is that original pricing? In the little chart.
Oh, page 3?
It just says 3 on mine.
Oh,
It says 2023 phase 2, phase 1, 25 lots, 181, 743.
yeah, that's the number that they presented in the report.
That was the original.
That was their original without the contingency,
Okay, so-
engineering, and GST.
So the prices that you gave us today, the 222, 25 or whatever, is for, as comparison to 181.
Right.
So there really is no cost savings if we did all of the phases, right?
So you're saying do all 100,
Oh, I see.
140,
No,
41 lots?
I was just, sometimes you look at phase 1 and then you look at all the
Yeah,
phases to
is it
see
cheaper to
if,
do all of them at the same time?
if there's economy of scale. That's what I'm
I guess I
asking.
can't answer that question, I guess,
Okay, so
without
that's
proper
not what
numbers.
we,
Yeah.
that's not what we did.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, no, that was gonna be my question, if the economy of scale was better if we
Right.
did a bigger project. That was all. Did anybody have any questions? Counselor Chappelle?
I do. Your worship, at 233,000, good luck. That's not gonna happen. So the question I have is, anytime we go to an engineering company and they look at this stuff, I mean, they got all kinds of built-in fees. Have we ever looked, and I don't even know if we can do it, can we do design and build? And we have a local contractor who does this kind of work, who does design and build. And could we talk to them and just see what they'd come up with a price for this stuff? Is that even a remote possibility? Because I know you have to go out to bid on this stuff, but can you go to these people? And, I mean, they do this stuff all the time, and they look for savings.
And I think I'll say, a company was approached within the town a few years back in regards to, either, we put the land up they develop it, we sell the lots, we revenue share at the end of the day. It didn't go any further. for that.
P2?
But not saying it can't happen again, like, but that was approached back in 2016, 17.
So it can be done?
Oh, possibly, yeah, it can be relooked at, yeah.
I would suggest that that would be the next avenue to try to, I mean, we need residential lots, 233,000 lots, not gonna cut the mustard. We need to figure out how to get that down to a reasonable amount, and getting someone's expertise to do a design and build may be the way to go. So, I mean, design and build is pretty consistent in the construction world today. So I would suggest that we go down that avenue and see what the price comes back at. I'm not sure what the rest of council feels, but we need to do something.
My concern about this is, I have two concerns. The initial price is pretty cost prohibitive for, 215 to 223 area zone for a bare lot. The other thing that I'm concerned about is if we don't go forward with the more than 25 lots, then the lift station costs would all be on those lots. And we just went through a process where we developed some lots for a higher price, and then they were given the evaluation and we had to take a loss. So I don't feel that this is the right, I think we need to look at other avenues, whether it's a P3 or P2 or cost sharing or, partnership with a developer, something. We definitely need lots, but I don't think that we should do it for this and then have to make a motion a council or two from now saying that the price is too high and we gotta bring it down. I'll go to Councillor Boniface and then Councillor Phillips again.
I agree with Councillor Shipple that it'd be good to bring another company in. The company that you're talking about, are they wanting to develop at the same time, like with buildings and that, or is this strictly they're gonna do the groundwork and there you go, sell it?
The way the proposal was done back in 2016, 17, I wasn't directly involved, but in regards to, it was to build the infrastructure side of it, and that was it. And they would sell the lot for spec homes or for personal homes.
Thank you.
Councillor Phillips?
Yeah, I also agree with Councillor Boniface and Shipple that this dollar amount makes it cost prohibitive for us to do that. I would like to see what a design and build with that company could potentially bring about. My question would be, would there be a cost associated with that to get those numbers from this company? Because there's a cost involved to crunch numbers and come up with that. Do you think that there would be a cost involved to come up with those numbers?
So, Your Worship, we can't sole source a P2. We would have to put the P2 out to an RFP to get that going.
Does anybody else have any other questions or comments about this? Did we want to give administration some direction with next steps, or just table it for information? Councillor Shipald?
Yes, I think the information we have, we table for information at this point, but then I'd be prepared to make a motion and we go out and summons the people in the marketplace to see what we can get for a design and build and have another look at it, taking a different approach. So,
Like put out for tender a
Correct.
P2 or P3?
P2 in this
Yeah.
case.
Right, because we own it. Is there any discussion on that motion? Did you want to make that a motion?
I'll make the first motion and we accept the report that we got from
JMAA. Oh, no, sorry.
Stantec, is it?
Yep.
As information. So there'll be two motions. This will be the first.
Okay, so I will ask if there's any questions on that motion. Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Councillor Shipple, your second motion.
Second motion is that we go and do a RFP to determine if somebody will join us as a town to form a P2 to go ahead and do design and build on that property at the north end of town and see what the pricing comes back like.
Can I make an addendum or open
What-
it?
What's your friendly
My
amendment?
friendly amendment is when he makes that motion, would it open it up to the whole area, like more than just the 25 lots if possible? Like in discussion, or how would you, like, do you know what I mean? Cause there might be an economy of scale if we had a partner.
So your worship, I mean, if you're gonna go down that path, I think it's the whole development area owned by the town.
So that's what I wanna discuss before you go to your motion, because is there an economy of scale? Like, do you know what I'm asking? Like, we don't have the information, but we have to put the lift station in anyways. Is it better off?
Well, no, I don't wanna flood the market. I think doing that whole area is, I'd say if we do the 57, that makes sense. I wouldn't wanna go much bigger than that, and I'm not sure, Mr. Kraus, if that's what you're suggesting is the
Oh,
57.
no, I mean, it could be a phased approach, but I think to make it worthwhile for a P2, for a private developer, they would probably wanna go larger than 25 lots. I mean, we could put an RFP out for 25 lots and see what comes back, and if it's a no-go, send it out again.
Is it an option to do like we're talking about for industrial and commercial, where we can waive, cause typically if we got a P2 and that P2 does all the infrastructure work, where in terms of us, as we sold lots, that they would get their cut. I don't know, I can't see the town coming up with a whole bunch of money and have it sitting there for the next 10 years with too many residential lots. I mean, we have to be somewhat cautious in terms of our fiduciary interests as a council as to where we put our monies. And so I think it doesn't make sense to get too big. I know for a contractor it may make sense, but from a town perspective, we don't want to hang ourselves in the next 3 councils thereafter with a substantial debt load.
And we have to spend money on that lift station. My concern is if we go through and the 25 lots don't sell, then we'll never go through the next 4 phases, and we have already paid for that whole lift station for the project, and then taxpayers have to pay for that which we won't end up developing for whatever extended period of time.
So I'm prepared to make that motion with the friendly amendment that we'd go to the 57 lot mark and go from there and see how that applies.
Just for council's clarification, this is a rise and report motion, so we'll have to bring this back to council. And
Oh.
then we'll have something drafted that council can actually see, like the RFP.
Thank you, Mr. Kraus. I'll then change the beginning of that motion to be a rise and report, and then I'll then continue on with that motion with the 2 friendly amendments to it. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions or comments on that motion, and seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of that rise and report? And that's carried. Thank you very much.
Your worship, if I could digress, because we're in a committee of the whole meetings for discussion. So when we're talking about off-site levies, and we're talking about the non-residential development incentive policy, and the question was for residential development, if it's in a development area that also has commercial. From the previous conversation. So administration is trying to draft that policy, and we're running into, some questions with council. So if a residential development that's part of a larger development area that contains commercial is going to have off-site levies deferred until the lot is sold, do we apply that to just strictly a residential development to keep it all fair and equal among developers? And so we're just trying to get a little guidance when we draft that policy and bring it back to council.
So my take on that is the drivers in this are industrial and commercial. And so knowing that, I think that only if a subdivision has all 2 or more, one being industrial or commercial, tied in with residential, then that would fit in. Now, we do have residential developers. Are they looking for that? I don't know. I guess where I'm concerned that all of a sudden we have just residential developments that go like that. Maybe it'll spur development, I don't know. I'm thinking out loud, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I mean,
so
to-
that was nothing, that was just, just for Counselor Phillips.
I mean, to me, if we're deferring off-site levies on industrial and commercial to spur industrial and commercial growth and land development, I don't see why we wouldn't consider that for residential as well. To, you know, defer those so when the lot sells, then those are paid. At least for consideration, I don't see why we wouldn't consider that.
So, can you discuss the MGA with us, though, because I thought that was an issue.
No, the MGA, stipulates on the taxes, right? Tax programs, but this is off-site levies. So council has the authority to defer off-site levies.
I think, we need both in our community. I mean, however we can spur development, the more growth our community has, the better tax base, the better it is for all ratepayers. I think they should be included in both. We have 2 realtors here that are selling houses within 3 days of it going on the market, so tells you something. Counselor Caprero?
I just have a question. How would that work since we have a developer right now that's doing residential? If we changed that, how does that look for them?
So on his current development, the off-site levies are paid, like on the lots that are available now. But on his next phase, or that company's next phase, then they would be deferred. So whenever it goes forward from when council passes the policy.
Counselor Shipwell, did you still have questions or comments?
No, I just have a comment, and thank you for bringing up such a difficult question, Mr. Kraus. I guess having heard Councillor Phillips, I would be inclined to have it for everybody. We need all those things to happen in our community. We need residential, commercial, and industrial property. So if that's what it takes to spur that, then I would be inclined to support that we blanket it all and move forward and go from there.
So, Your Worship, that's the way we'll draft the policy and bring it back to council for the review and decision. Thank you. Thank you for the guidance.
Counselor Phillips, did you still have a comment?
Just a quick comment. I think if we're doing it for commercial industrial, we should do it for residential. It's not like we're zeroing that dollar amount. We're just deferring it till once they sell that property. So the town will collect that money. It's just deferring it to the sale date of those properties.
Yeah, I think that's what we decided. Okay, do you need a motion for that?
No, yeah,
Okay. Okay. So then, I believe that concludes 6.1 of the review phase 2, and it's 8 o'clock, so I'd like to stop for another 5-minute or 6-minute break. Thank you very much. So welcome back to June 13th, 2023 Committee of the Whole for the Town of Rocky Mountain House. We're in old business. We have 6.2 an RFD for Town Hall Building Assessment. And so everybody has a copy of the feasibility study in front of them. Mr. So, Ms. Quinlan.
You have 3 documents in front of you. 2 of them are in the agenda package, so I brought forward the briefing note that we presented that triggered the feasibility study. I also included the entire building evaluation for your reading pleasure. This was done in 2011, and then I didn't think about this one, so it's a paper copy, but it's the feasibility study where they looked at the 3 different options. So I'll just refresh because I can't remember. I think it was this council that we brought this forward, but basically I summarized in this briefing note sort of the results of the evaluation that was done in 2011, and so it lists sort of the 7 things that Scott Builders looked at. There is a summary of the 8 sort of major things that they found in this building. I'll just run through them really quick. Like, there's hazardous material. The fire ratings, basically in the whole building, are probably very poor. I know there's straw in the 2 floors, so if there ever was a fire, getting out, if it was a big fire, it'd be difficult to get out. The fire rating in the floor, there's a dead-end corridor. Handicap accessibility is not to code. Somebody coming in can't get downstairs. The handicap washroom, I don't believe it's large enough. And I know just even in the last couple months, we've had people coming in that are having difficulties even coming up the ramp at the back. The mechanical upgrades are required for code compliance. So basically all the HVAC systems they were up to code many years ago, but they're not anymore. Insulation is insufficient, so in the winter it's extremely cold. We basically use space heaters, and in the summer it's sort of working. And space allocation, I guess in 11 when they looked at this, the whole building is smaller, the space, as to what they say office standards should be. So those are the summaries of kind of what they identified. From this, when we presented this, rather than doing another evaluation that would just say, yeah, it's 12 years older, it's now probably maybe has deteriorated more, we just had them do the feasibility study and sort of gave you the 3 options. So I guess that's the discussion tonight is, you know, where council feels they want to go with this. And I don't know, do we want to talk about the roof right now, or wait?
Might as well.
Yep, so that's another item. So we have another roof leak. So it's the second one in a year. So we got a quote to redo the roof for $61,000. I mean, we can try patching it for, well, they have a quote of $2,000, but they're unsure if that's the cause of the leak. It's around the perimeter, so they were going to try the perimeter first, and then if it doesn't leak, then we're good. If it does, then we have to do more investigation. So we either got to start investing money into this building, or we keep patching it, knowing that in a few years, you know, this building is going to be replaced.
Thank you very much. Councillor Phillips, did you have a question?
Not a question, just, you know, in reading the 2011 report, I mean, there's asbestos in this building, there's lead paint, there's problems with the HVAC system, handicap access, lack of sprinklers, you know, roof leaking, the report goes on and on and on. I don't think, and I know we discussed this earlier, but renovating the existing building is going to be just as costly as building a new building. So I don't think renovating this existing building is even an option we should be considering. And thank you, Betty, for not updating a report that's gonna tell us the exact same information and spending money on that. So thank you for being prudent with the tax dollars on that.
Does anybody else have any more comments or questions? So, Counselor Caprero.
Just my 2 cents when looking at the different options. I agree with Councillor Phillips. To me, it doesn't make sense to put a bunch of money into this building that's already 50-plus years old. And looking at option 3 in this too, we've looked at attaching to the existing arena. I'm not really in favor of that either. So for myself, if that's what we're looking for today in terms of what's council's preference, for myself, I'd be more leaning towards a new build on this existing site. It just doesn't make sense to me to put more money into this building.
Counselor Boniface.
I agree with the new build. There's too many issues with this building. It just doesn't make financial sense to do anything more in here. Keep it running while we build new. But I will say that I am not happy with any of this. I don't like any of this, not one thing that, to sit here and tell me that concrete lasts for 20 years is ridiculous. When Europe has basements in it that were built 2,000 years ago and they're still good concrete. Like, that's just a flippant remark as far as I'm concerned. And it was Councillor Schipple that brought forward, if we're gonna build a new town hall, we really should be looking at what we do, and it shouldn't be just a square box like our community center is. I was heavily involved when they built the community center, and there was a lot of big ideas, and then the budget came to this, and they got kind of bypassed. And it is sufficient for our needs most of the time, but I think we can do much, much better. When you go to other communities and you see things, I was recently out on Thetis Island, which is a small island with 600 people, and I have to say you should go into their town hall because it's phenomenal. I mean, they have a one-room schoolroom on there, so they actually use their town hall as a gymnasium. There's a common area there that the kids can play floor hockey and that. And there's a kitchen in it that they can cook meals. They have once a month they have a get together with the whole community and that. I think we can do better. And yes, at the end of the day, it may cost a little bit, but if we're forward thinking, this is a building that could last us for 40, 50 years and plan for the future. And I also, the gentleman that was here thought basements were a waste. The cheapest real estate you got is throwing a basement in there, put all your services in your basement. The one thing that it seems that every home I've ever built, there's never enough storage in it, never. I could put 100 closets in a house and it still won't be enough. So build storage rooms. Because there's all these files and everything that all get stored and all the tax papers have to be kept for 10 years. I'm sure it's the same for here as it is for my business. So what do you do with it all? So we should have that all looked after. So that's my ideas. I think we could bring if we build it right, we can bring other groups into our fold that rent out rooms in the basement or whatever for burden bearers or whatever it is, just something that gets more people into our town hall on a regular basis. So thanks.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Boniface. I'm disappointed when that some of the ideas about environmental and all those kind of things weren't considered when doing a report like this. Before that meeting, I Googled the town of Coaldale, and they're moving into their building as we speak. It's exactly the same thing that we have, but there was just more thought. So I want to move forward with a new building on the same site, but I think we need a lot more discussion about what we want to see in the building. I think maybe that's what this report was missing, is a little bit more clear direction from council and our community and administration. So that's.
So your worship, I mean, this is just a feasibility study, the design and whatever, I mean, that's really not a consideration. They were just, really what we were after for them was, what square footage do we need and what cost is that, right? It's really like down to a Class D type of thing. So if council proceeds, then we would go out to an RFP for an architectural firm. And then that, when we get into those details, that's when that happens. And we can provide guidance to that architect, through the design process.
Thank you. Counselor Phillips?
Yes, I agree. This is our one opportunity to potentially make a bold statement for the next 50 years for this community. We have other aging infrastructure in town. We have an old library building, we have an old fire hall. We have old buildings in town because a lot of the infrastructure was all built at the same time in the 70s. This is our opportunity to maybe look at creating something. I don't know what that something may be. Does it include the library, the fire hall? Does it include multi-use areas for community groups? Does it involve areas that we can rent out? I don't know, but I think it's definitely something to look at because we can build on the same, the same footprint that we have here. We can build a town hall on the same spot, and we will get a nicer, newer building, but we won't get too much more on the existing footprint. So I think it's something that we need to look at and have some really forward thinking for the next 50 years. Having it on the existing site, that's an option, but I think we should also look at a different option as well too.
But it wouldn't be in this footprint though, like we have the lots adjacent, right, as discussed. And so that's where I was thinking, is that it doesn't have to fit in this basement, right? If it's on this lot, there's a lot we could do with this lot. There's a lot of space here. If we, really hash it out before we spend money on an RFP is what I'm asking, and give them better directions. And rather than just going to an architect, sometimes I like going right to whoever's gonna build it. And why do we need an architect if we can just copycat another community or another building and get what we want without spending the extra money? Councillor Chappelle.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I agree with what everybody had to say around the table. The only thing I think we need to look at is possibly another land location. I think we'd be landlocked if we were to do anything of any substance on this site. So I think we really need to have a look at that. I agree we need to have some council input into what that may look like. Councillor Hutchinson at the last time we talked about this brought up the fact of adding value-added services to that building. I think that is something we need to look at. And, Councillor Phillips said, hey, let's make it right. Let's not chintz out or do whatever. I think all this stuff is sort of, we heard what somebody can do on a small island. I think we need to have a really close look at where we're at. And the location, to me, should not be the deciding factor. I think we need to make sure we do it right.
Thank you very much. Did you have something to say, Councillor Quirrell? Councillor Hutchinson?
Sorry. Yeah, I was gonna comment what Mr. Kraus already said about this is not, it's just the feasibility report. Again, we're hands are tied with land, usable land that we can put something on, but there's a lot of options, like the mayor just said, with this piece of property here, and what they have in this design, it may be something that we do, going north-south, all, just shifting and changing and stuff. The other kind of question I had to ask would be, is there any place that we do have in town that could be utilized as a temporary workspace so that they could tear this down and start and increase the size and maybe have the library in, or other options like that?
Actually, yes. I don't think we'd have a facility that would accommodate all staff in one building. The school division has offered us offices if we run out of space here, over at their main building.
Waldrose?
Yep. And, we can accommodate staff in the rec building too. The FCSS area is still vacant. When we put it out for lease, we got no response for that. So yes, that's feasible. Operationally, it makes it tough, but it's feasible.
So that's kind of where my thoughts were, if the first stage would be level this, move into temporary buildings, and then even if it's a two-part build, where you're starting here and it's sufficient on this, maybe 1.5 lots that start getting staff back in, and then they continue building towards the north. Just kind of thinking out of the box.
Counselor Caprero and then Counselor Chappelle.
Mr. Kraus, there's some kind of report that is coming back to council about our aging buildings that we own in town, correct?
So right now in the draft strategic plan, council's asked for, has put in that draft strategic plan, facility or master plan. So once that's adopted by council, then we'll be bringing back a report for the 2024 budget to have that plan done.
I'm just wondering, once we have that, if it's something where we can look at what is coming up that, like the library, for example, it is an older building, where we can look at, well, these places maybe could be incorporated into a new town hall. I like Councillor Hutchinson's idea of temporarily moving everyone elsewhere. I know it would be a little bit of a pain, but if we need that extra space to start a build, because we need a larger space, because we are incorporating different facilities within.
I mean, yeah, and there's a lot of options to consider, and that's the discussion with council, because you can go more than one story, right? I mean, two-story, I mean, a lot of town administration staff can be on a second story.
Yeah,
you know.
I think it just makes sense to add in what we can, and it would enhance what we build, right? If we can throw a library in there and whatever else, I just think it's worth looking at for sure.
Counselor Chappelle.
Just a comment about the library. The Dawes Center in Red Deer is a public school with a private library in that. The Red Deer has moved their library in there. We have a new school build coming here. That may be the opportunity to move a library into the new school build. And if we get in on the ground floor in the discussions, we might be able to get in at a reasonable dollar in a joint library facility there. So I just bring that forward that I know Red Deer's done it now. They got it in 2 schools in Red Deer. So it may be something we look at here down the road.
That's a fantastic idea. When we did the FCM, there was a tour of the Regina School downtown, so it's an inner city school, and they incorporated a kitchen for the community. And just like David Thompson, when you're doing a school build, you can get the community to put dollars in, so we could incorporate a public library into a school system. That's something that they're doing now. There's no, and it adds value to that school and also meets some service needs and a community hub for space that's vacant every weekend or whatnot. It's a great idea, great idea. Councillor Phillips.
So I have 2 questions. One, can we go 3 stories high? Is that a possibility?
Yeah. Provincial building does.
Okay, so that was my first question. The second one, just to elaborate on that, I was at the Visions West graduation ceremony on Thursday, and I did talk with Brad Volkman a little bit. And, their number one budgetary capital item is, the school that we were talking about. And he said at that time, it's something that council should be discussing now. If we want to do more than just a regular build, now is the time to be discussing it, because if we want to add a library to that school, that's the time to do it, when they're looking at the capital projects and building the school and designing the school. So that's, just another option when we come down. Maybe it doesn't have to be in a town building, but it could be with a new school building.
It's unfortunate that we don't have our not infrastructure, but facilities report back, because it would help us lead what needs, like Councillor Capero said, what needs. So, do we have any more comments or questions? We would like to move forward with looking at ideas, and do we want to have another meeting about like this again to hash out more what we would like to see? I'd like to have a couple more meetings about what we want and what we'd like to see before we just do an RFP. So the better research we do to give to the RFP, the better result we're gonna get back. Does that sound fair and reasonable? Councillor Phillips?
One sector that we haven't talked yet, I think we should talk to the public about this as well. Because this is, maybe there's some ideas out there that our residents have that could make a new town hall / multi-use / library, fire hall, whatever you wanna put in it, that could make that building very, very enriching and very rewarding for this community. So I think, you know, obviously we're not gonna have any committee of the whole meetings now until September. Maybe this is something over the summer months that we could, you know, ask the residents what they think about a new town hall, what would they like to see in it, what amenities would they like to have. Then when we come back for more discussion, we at least have that information as well.
I think summertime's hard to hit the public. You're not gonna, I mean, like, I definitely think, I also think in order to get feedback, you can't give them a blank page. I think you have to have a concept first and some ideas first, because if you just give someone a blank page, it doesn't help with the creative process. We would have to maybe give them this report to say, what do you think about these 3 ideas? Or something like that, in order for it to, I like the idea of definitely involving the public, but I just think we need to come down with more concept first. Councillor Hutchinson?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there, Mayor, but what I also fear is inflation and costing and, you know, we it's not that this has been put off, but it kind of seems like it's not been a priority, and I think, you know, given the roof repairs and what we have to make the decision on that, the longer that this gets decided about, the more expensive it's gonna get. So if we're looking at 6 million today, we're probably looking at, you know, it could be up to 8 million in a year's time from now.
I disagree. I think the more meetings we have we should talk about it every week and say, oh, I thought about this, I thought about that, I looked at this one, we should do tours. Like, we should do a tour of the Coaldale. They just built it. It's exactly, it has the exact same room count, and walk through it. Have administration do a tour down there, walk through it. It's exactly this, but it's on 2 stories with underneath. They have, I'm just saying that we should do more research before we start making decisions, because fixing a roof, 40 grand, 60 grand, whatever the roof repair is gonna cost us, versus $8 million and it not being what we need, what we want, and there's mistakes. Let's just think it ahead. There's no one's arguing at the table that we don't need to replace this building. It's definitely not feasible, just like a school. Councillor Chappelle.
I just have a question for administration. We've all had a discussion and open dialogue here about what we want to go forward. I guess I'm looking for a suggestion from administration. Now that they've heard us, what do they suggest we do as a go-forward plan?
Nobody wants to answer.
Well, I think one of the first thing you do is site selection. I mean, the site selection is gonna determine building footprint, size, 2 stories in there. So, I think that's probably one of the main first point. There is an advantage. I mean, municipalities typically have their city hall, town hall in the core of their community. So, you know, if that's a philosophy that this council wants to maintain, you know, that limits site selection. You know, this is a site, and land was bought to do it here, so from previous councils. So the council selects site, and then I think we can start moving on to, okay, what do we want in the building, and how is that going to look? Because, I mean, if we go 2 stories or 3 stories, yes, you can accommodate, you know, a library and other aspects to it, or community groups. So I think site selection is probably where we want to go first. Saying, no, this is where we want to build it, let's see how we can do it. And maybe after we start flushing it out, it doesn't work, you know. But I mean, That's the conversations that the mayor wants to have at the future, but if we don't know where we're gonna build it, then the building can get so big that it doesn't even fit on the site, so now we just wasted time, but, just my suggestion.
Okay. So if we're discussing site, I really am keen on this site because it is central, because we paid 50 years ago, so $1972 for the land versus $25 for the land. Not that we can't sell this land, but just that that's a consideration, that we've already got equity in the land that we're already on. So I'm fine with this site, knowing that what else is shovel ready, not gonna be developed or available in the future. But we need shovel ready land for us to do the next steps, if that makes sense. Councillor Boniface?
I'm fine with this site. I mean, if it'll fit on here, what we need, that's fine. I'd have to say though that I would actually like to put it out to the public without any of this. And my reasoning for that is yes, you'll get a lot of crap sending in kind of thing, but we only need one or two really good ideas that could really drive it. And if we give them a template already, they'll try to work within that. And I'd like to see their ideas without that template. What ideas do they have? Because we have incredibly creative people in our community, and I think we might get some really good ideas that we just blow it open to them.
I think that's a great idea, actually. Councillor Phillips?
Just to add to what Councillor Boniface had just said, we have Market on Main starting up here very quickly. Market on Main would be a very good venue to talk to our public, talk to them, see what they want, have a big board there where they can actually sit there and draw and make ideas and put suggestions. I think over the summer we could collect a lot of good data from our residents. So I agree that, giving them a blank slate maybe is exactly what we need. So there's no preconceived notions, there's just a lot of ideas, and we only need one or two, as Councillor Boniface said, that we can run with.
So, administration, can we get some feedback from the public and consider site locations, or is that something that you need to know today?
No, Your Worship, I mean, there's no rush. I mean, council put in $200,000 for a design, in this budget. But I mean, that can roll into next year too. But if council wants public engagement, we just wanna know what public engagement council wants. Is it just Market on Main, or is it an online survey, is it an open house? Or, and then we can plan accordingly.
I think if we did some sort of a formal survey that was paper copied at Market on Main, because that's a great place, and also available online, because obviously, maybe not obviously, but we could have a building committee, and maybe the people that are giving those great ideas would become part of that committee if we had their contact information through the survey process. Councillor Hutchinson?
I just had a question about, I can't recall what the school district said about Rocky E. When the new school.
It doesn't have a slated date
Doesn't
yet,
have a
it's
date
within
yet.
the next 5 years.
So, and I know that's not center, but, the options of that piece of land being available for possibility.
Development.
Yeah. And the other thing, talking with where you were going with that, however it was structured for the rec plan, master plan on Market on Main, that went over really well. I don't know how, I know there was like laptops down there as well as paper copies. It might be something to consider.
So would you like a rise and report to bring to council, public engagement for this new building design?
Your Worship, I don't think we need to do a rise and report, because council's not making a formal decision. We're just looking for direction. You can provide us direction at this meeting for public engagement.
Okay, so does everybody feel comfortable that we move forward with public engagement and give some sort of, what sort of boundaries would you like put on the public engagement that gives you the
you don't-
best outcome?
Your worship, maybe I'll ask for a rise and report, because then we'll draft the survey and bring it back to council to make sure we're hitting the mark, and because we don't have a committee of the whole meeting till September,
Okay.
we'll bring it back to the council
Okay,
meeting.
because I always think of surveys as a monkey survey. If you don't do the survey, any monkey can fill it out, and you have the same information no matter what you say. I would like to do that. So I can make that motion unless someone else already has one in mind, that we do a rise and report to the next council meeting for a public engagement over the new town, what do we call it, town hall building.
Yeah, if it could be the July meeting, it'd be appreciated, your worship, because
Thank you.
I don't think we'll have time to pull it together.
Is it July 6th? Do I need the note? July 4th?
And I'll look over at Miss Button to make sure I'm not putting too much pressure on her.
I can make it for whatever date is July
Does that work?
4th and 8th. I don't want to put it too late because Market on Main already starts next week. Next week? 2 weeks. Thank you, 2 weeks. So, the July 4th meeting sounds adequate. Any further discussion on that item? If not, I'll call that to a vote. Seeing none, all in favor of that rise and report? And that's carried. I've lost my agenda. So moving forward, that concludes 6.2. 7, we have no new business. 8, correspondence for action, we have none. 9, correspondence for information, none. 10, action list. Mr. Kraus, did you want to go over that?
I just lost it on my computer.
It's Tuesday, it's probably doing an update.
So, your worship, the first one, that is on photo radar, and that is going to, that delegation has happened, and we're bringing it to council for further discussion at the service level. The trail system and area around the museum, that is coming back to council for either service level in 2024 budget, as we have an overall concept plan being developed. And that's it.
And so, do we have any action items to add besides things we've already discussed, or none? So I'll make a motion to accept for information the action list for June 13th, 2023. Any questions or comments on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor? And that's carried. So moving forward, do we have any administrative inquiries tonight? Councillor Chappelle.
Your worship, if I could, I have a couple. When we did coffee for the councillor, one thing that came up was speeding on the Bottle Depot Road and on 50th Avenue here by the park. Certain citizen complaints, and we talked about having a portable sign that tracks or indicates what speed you're going. And in both cases, they felt that may be something that could work to try and deter the speeding on there. Do we still have that portable traffic sign? And can we use it, and could we use it for those 2 streets?
Yeah, we do have those signs that track speed.
Yeah, they're not portable in the trailer, they're
Thank you, Mr. Schrader.
Yeah, it's not a portable trailer anymore. They're actually, Public Works has to install a post, and then it works off solar power. So we can put one, if that's a concerned area for citizens, on 50th.
The one that they're referring to, they said was on 2 wheels, and I recall seeing it. We don't own that anymore?
Yeah, we don't, that's gone by the
Obsolete.
wayside. We purchased 4 portable signs that you can see throughout the community.
Okay.
I think one's on 60th, one's on 57th Street. One's on 50th down here coming up.
One's on,
Yeah,
57th.
And then we usually put one out on one of the highways. So, but we do have one extra presently that we're just kind of repairing, I guess. that we could put out on 50th here.
Okay, so the two streets are the Bottle Depot Road and 50th here by the park. So,
Okay.
fine.
Actually, we talked about, you could move those any number of different areas, and we talked about picking different areas to get data back.
Yeah,
Could
which
we
it can
move-
be, yeah, it's just
could we
up to
move-
Public Works, you know, making arrangements with Public Works to make the signs, posts, I guess, into the ground.
Okay, Mr. Shanks.
We can move the sign there, that's not an issue. We could go one step farther and do the same thing we did at 54th Street and 50th Avenue and put in a four-way stop. The sign really doesn't slow them down. It really doesn't. We've kind of known that on the other streets that they've been on. This has always been an issue. Traffic calming is the fastest way to do it, and a four-way stop is that way. And being downtown core, it really is not gonna hurt. You know, we did the same thing at the Red Apple, 49th, the next street over, 48th, and
For
it
the
actually
school.
works very well. It's an idea.
I think knowing that we're gonna likely get photo radar eventually here, hopefully in the new year, just on a temporary basis, that rather than going in and putting stop signs in. The citizens just asked for, remember who was with me with coffee at a concert at that meeting, basically just said, you have that thing that indicates the speed and hopefully it'll slow them down. If it doesn't, we've done at least something, and hopefully it does do some remedial work there.
Yeah,
I would just suggest we put those temporary signs up and see what that happens and if we get any action.
I like that idea of just moving those around the community because they're giving us data, right? They track how often people go into the, whatever color it changes to when it's not green, right? Because when it's green, it has a happy face and Mr. Schwader, it tracks the data, right? So then it also will highlight, by moving those around the
Yep.
community, it will also highlight to either our officers that maybe we need some speed monitoring in that area, or that's where we would put future photo radar possibilities. Cause it would give us data, right?
Correct, yeah, as far as, like, there was a report that, you know, Senior Peace Officer Schmales does have hot spots in the area, and those are provided to global traffic as well, as far as, we know what the hot spots are within the community.
Okay.
Thank you,
Another-
Your Worship. The
Yep.
second one I have, again, from a copy of the counselor, that had to do with the dump moving outside the dump fence. And I'm not sure if you've had a chance. I went back there the other day to have a look, and that's behind where we have the, where we dump off trees and grass and all that stuff. And people have cut a hole in the fence behind the dump. And they go in through the fence, and then they take stuff out of the dump bins within the fence compound, and they've moved it out behind there. And a coffee to council, somebody asked if we had a look at it. I went back there and had a look, and when they said it was 4 feet high back there with junk, there's, maybe not 4 feet high, but there's substantial garbage in the trees back there. Number one, I guess we just gotta do a repair to the fence for ever how long that will probably last, which will probably be a day. But I'm more worried about the garbage back there and the possibility of fire from that garbage back there. I think it's kind of a mess back there in the trees.
Is that town land?
It is, yes.
I don't see
We
We're
are aware of
responsible.
the issue back there.
Are you, okay,
Yep.
awesome.
We've already had to repair the fence
Oh.
at the eco center on the backside. There's really not a lot else we can do. We have cameras, but cameras really don't show anything on the backside there.
220.
Yes.
Counselor Chappelle, do you have another item?
My last item,
Yes.
and I know, Mr. Kraus, you sent out an email about the lights at Shoppers Drug Mart, and I know the person who's brought that forward watches these meetings, so I just wanted to bring it up. And I sent out an email trying to summarize what his concerns were, and I'm not sure if that email basically saying that the light never turns to the walk sign unless you push the button, and he just wanted to get that rectified. So his concern was how long he had to walk if he didn't push the button, where he almost got run over on the street because he felt that it was a lesser time than with the walk symbol when he gets it working. And sometimes in the wintertime, he said that it was, you had to push the button at the right time to get the cycle to to kick into the walk button. So he just wanted it the same as at the hospital intersection where it coincides with the green. Green equals walk, where it shoppers, it never shows walk. So hopefully that.
Yes,
Oh,
we
did-
have
oh, you forwarded the email on? Awesome, appreciate that, thank you.
Yeah,
a
so-
response, and we are looking at the two intersections, so the 48th Street and Highway 11. So
But-
both of them.
Counselor Shipple, it does change when you push the button, correct? Because it
That
it
is
does.
correct,
Yeah, okay,
as long as you
yeah.
push the button at the
Yeah, as
right
long as
time.
you push the button, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have two administrative inquiries about the rodeo grounds. And so the first one is are we aware that there seems to be a little bit of a bird problem on the north side underneath? Because I was told abundantly that why doesn't the town buy some fake owls?
So, your worship, we are aware of the problem, and we discussed buying fake owls, but it was already established.
Okay.
So we're aware for it next year.
Okay,
And in talking to Mr. Ament, perhaps putting in the 2024 budget for council's consideration is like netting or something, so the birds can't get them,
Yeah.
so.
the people that brought it to my attention were very solidly, seriously, think that owls will just solve it, but they also think that it's a health issue, that if it's not steamed, because it doesn't seem like it got cleaned well enough before the thing, so did anyone, I don't know what steaming bleachers is like, but that, I don't know if that was a concern, I'm just asking if, we're aware of the problem and we're working to solutions, I can forward that on.
We are.
'Kay.
Before the event, the crews went out with our steam truck.
Oh, okay,
And they pressure washed everything, all the
Okay.
bleachers and everything.
'Kay.
But it's really hard to keep it clean when there's that many birds out there.
Yeah.
I was there this morning and wow.
yeah, so
It's
obviously
ridiculous.
during the event, there was not a bird to be, we all, I sat in a couple different locations throughout the weekend, I didn't see one bird, but it's because there's a million people there.
Yeah.
My second question is about the lease, so is the town responsible for cleaning things before the event, like windows on the booths? Or would that be the person who's renting, I know that, is it? So there was some concerns that the windows on the booths, I don't know what they're called, but the VIPs, but not on where the announcer is, where the bleachers are. The windows were really dirty, I had to go up all the stairs and look at, and it's on the outside of the window, so when you're we paid to use that, you can't even clean it from your side. And so that was just, I wasn't sure who was responsible for that, so.
I'm pretty sure we are.
'Kay.
We'll have a look at it.
Yeah, your worship, I'll have to check the lease agreement and talk to Mr. Ament.
Yeah, I just,
You know, and maybe it was an oversight for this.
yeah,
but-
it was just a checklist, and, cause I don't think that they could get, anyways, I went up all the stairs to look at exactly what they look like, and you're welcome. So that was my only two inquiries. Counselor Boniface, did you have an inquiry?
Just a comment on the windows, one, admin already knows that those windows are needing to be replaced, so they're looking at that. And two, most of the times, those people, when they're in there, they just take that plexiglass out, lay it on the floor and
It's
look
not
out.
it's not the plexiglass. It's the white, it's not on across the street. It's where everybody sits, and in the top, they're white vinyl glass sliding windows with that.
Okay, I haven't even been up there then.
I had never been up there before either. I always sit in the cheap seats, and so, it was you know which ones I mean? Yes, okay. So I've brought it forward, and thank you very much for taking my inquiry. Anything else? Counselor Phillips?
Yes, I thought this would be a good opportunity just for Mr. Kraus to be able to give an update on the blue bins. I know we had some additional information today, and I thought that might be something that would be beneficial to have that information out tonight.
Sure. So we had ordered the blue bins back in February, the end of February, and they were going to be put into production for delivery at the end of June. They had a machine go down that actually stamps the bins themselves. We found out today that they won't be delivered now. They're going into production July, mid-July, and we'll receive it as soon as they're done. So they have sent out their apologies and everything, so,
So the updated date would be after mid-July,
oh yes.
which, if I tell people, could I tell them September 1st?
We're hoping the best.
I always like to give them the farthest date, September 1st, and then if it comes sooner, it's a blessing, and if it's later, so give me an idea what I should say to people.
Right now, we're kind of pushing the company because of this, and the sooner they get them to us, we want them put together while we still have our staff available and possibly the arena to put them together. If it pushes past the end of August, we're not sure what we're gonna do or how we're gonna do it, but we'll make it happen.
Okay. So I'm gonna say September 1st if anybody asks. That doesn't hurt your-
October, your worship.
October,
Yeah.
October, I'll say October 1st. Thank you for the clarification, because someone's gonna hold me to it if I like to give a faraway date and then pleasantly surprise them with an earlier result, so, thank you very much. Anybody else have any, inquiries? Seeing none, do we have any notices of motion today? Seeing none, I'll move forward. We have no closed session, so if there's nothing else this evening, I'll adjourn the meeting. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.